Chapter 1699. On the other side, in the fairy tale hotel, many of his companions were still there. They continued to eat and drink as much as they could while making a ruckus. Some of the residents living in the neighboring hotels started to complain. Noah was at the bar with Makarov, discussing with Makarov about some of today's discoveries, such as the fact that the person behind the scenes absorbing the mana of the high mages participating in the Great Magic Wars was most likely the kingdom, as well as the abnormal behavior of Raventail and so on. Makarov seemed to be attaching great importance to these two matters, but he didn't manage to find out anything. In front of Noah, he put on a distressed expression. Looking at the distressed Makarov, Noah could only helplessly help. After all, Makarov kept saying that he was going to retire, but when it came to matters related to the guild, he wouldn't give up without getting to the bottom of it. Noah originally intended to solve these two matters himself, but because he couldn't resist Makarov's questioning, he could only use the excuse of discussing the matter with this worrisome old president. And obviously even Noah had just found some clues, so Makarov didn't know what to do. Thus, Makarov could only be distressed, making Noah laugh. At this time, Noah suddenly felt a familiar mana fluctuation. Feeling that familiar mana fluctuation, Noah's expression slightly froze, and he suddenly stood up. Noah's action instantly attracted the attention of everyone present. Seeing Noah suddenly stand up with an unsightly expression, Makarov immediately asked, "What's wrong?" "I felt Myra's mana." Noah directly walked out of the bar, leaving this sentence behind as he quickly walked out. Mira is fighting now, she might have encountered an attack. While leaving this sentence, Noah also walked out of the inn. His figure directly soared into the sky, turning into a stream of light, and shot in the direction of the familiar mana fluctuation he sensed. It was only then that the group of magic shooters from Fairy Tale came to their senses. They were all shocked, and rushed out of the inn in unison. They rushed in the direction that Noah was flying at as fast as they could. Whoosh! In the starry night sky, a stream of light was like a meteor streaking across the sky, shooting straight in the direction of Crocus. His dark and deep eyes were like those of an owl, flashing with a somewhat cold expression while constantly scanning the surroundings. Following the familiar mana fluctuation that he sensed, Noah quickly arrived above a dark street. Then Noah saw it. On the street below, a black swamp-like fog was violently spinning like a vortex, repeatedly releasing an evil aura. In the constantly spinning black fog, Mira, who had received Satan's soul, was agitated with surging mana. She had a slightly uncomfortable expression on her face, as if she had fallen into a swamp and was struggling with difficulty. Beside her, Lise Anna seemed to have fainted and was lying there. Seeing this, Noah more or less guessed the situation. There was no doubt that Mira and her party had been attacked. Moreover, the attacker's strength was very high, binding Mira and making it difficult for her to move. As for Lise Anna, although he didn't know what had happened to her, there wasn't any change in her aura. It seemed that she had just fainted. These speculations appeared in Noah's mind in an instant. After a moment, Noah's eyes turned sharp, and he suddenly stretched out a hand, aiming at the thick black fog below. Clang! A blue magic array spun out in front of Noah's palm, like a turret, and aimed downward, gathering mana. Hum! In the next moment, the blue magic array trembled, and the mana gathered in it turned into a beam of light that shot out toward the pitch-black fog below. Bang! The dazzling beam of mana collided with the black swamp-like fog, causing a muffled explosion. Then, as if canceling each other out, they both exploded, turning into white and black spots, dissipating into the air. It was only then that Mira seemed to have been released. Her body became light, and after staggering a few steps, she turned her head, looked in Lisanna's direction, and rushed over. A dazzling light bloomed from Myra's body, allowing her to release herself from receiving Satan's soul and rush to Lisanna's side. At this moment, Noah had already descended from the sky. He picked up Lise Anna, checked her condition, and breathed a sigh of relief. Lise Anna! Mira hugged her as well, looking at Noah anxiously. How's Lise Anna? Don't worry, she's fine. Noah grabbed Myra's hand and looked into her eyes, indicating for her to calm down. She's just fainted because she's exhausted too much mana. She'll wake up when she recovers some mana. Is that so? Mira was relieved, and she breathed a huge sigh of relief. That's great. What's going on? Noah asked Mira as he hugged Lisanna. And where's Shu and I? We were ambushed. Mira bit her lip lightly. Shu and I seems to have been taken away. Noah's expression darkened. So they were ambushed? The ambusher shouldn't be Raventail, right? Noah asked calmly. At the very least, I don't think Raventail has the ability to bind you and take Shu and I away. I don't know who the ambusher is either. I was trapped by the black mist as soon as we were ambushed, and I don't know what's going on outside. I can only vaguely hear Shu and I calling out Lisanna's name, and she seems to be talking to someone. Mira said unwillingly. Then she seemed to have thought of something. She raised her eyes and looked at Noah. But the ambusher left me a message. If you want to find Shu and I, you have to go to the outskirts of Crocus alone. You can't bring anyone with you. In other words, the ambusher's target wasn't Mira, Lisanna, or Shu and I but Noah. Mira clearly understood that, and her eyes were filled with worry as she looked at Noah. However, Mira didn't say anything and remained silent. She held Noah's hand tighter and tighter. Feeling the strength of Mira's hand, Noah immediately held it back and smiled at Mira. Don't worry, even a Conoraglia can't do anything to me. How can an ambusher who only knows how to sneak around do anything to me? In a single sentence, Noah's plan was completely revealed. Mira didn't say anything and only held Noah's hand tightly, revealing her usual gentle and sweet smile. Yes, I believe you. Noah nodded and placed Lisanna in Mira's arms. Then he hugged Mira as well. Grandpa and Alusha should be on their way here now. They'll be here soon, Noah instructed. Tell them not to act rashly for the time being. Leave everything here to me. If I'm not back by tomorrow, let Connor replace me with a substitute member. Shu and I didn't fight today, and the substitute member of Squad B hasn't been confirmed yet, so there shouldn't be a problem. I know. Just leave the Great Demon Battle exhibition to us. You've already won a lot of advantages for us. We'll definitely win, Mira said softly as she snuggled in Noah's arms. Remember to bring Shu and I back. Noah kissed Mira's forehead and then Lisanna's forehead before getting up. Under Mira's gaze, he turned into a streak of light and shot into the sky, flying out of the city. Looking at Noah's gradually disappearing figure, Mira hugged Lisanna tightly and murmured softly, "Come back soon." Chapter 1700. The night gradually deepened. Some cold wind slowly blew across the land, causing the flowers and trees on the outskirts of Carlacas to sway, giving off a very tranquil feeling. In the sky, dark clouds began to appear, covering the moonlight. For a moment, darkness swallowed the entire land, causing the light to become extremely dim. At a certain moment in Carlacas where there was still sufficient light, a stream of light flew out, streaking across the night sky at an extremely fast speed, and landed on the outskirts. Noah slowly stepped forward and looked around. Whoosh! The cold wind seemed to have not noticed that the atmosphere had begun to become tense, and continued to blow across the land in the outskirts, causing Noah's robe to flutter. Noah slightly closed his eyes against the cold wind, then suddenly opened them, looked in one direction and said straightforwardly, "Stop fooling around. Enough with your mystifying tricks. It's time to come out, right?" The whole place was silent. The silence seemed to be mocking Noah's words, silently telling him that there was no one here. It continued to spread in the air. Noah just quietly looked in that direction without saying anything, and without doing anything, as if he was not anxious at all, maintaining his silence. Maintaining this strange state, it was not until 5 minutes later that a clear sound of speechlessness was heard. Immediately, in the direction Noah was looking, several figures began to slowly appear, and walk towards him. Looking at the group of people slowly approaching, Noah's eyes narrowed slightly. There were a total of 5 people. The leader of the group was a man clad in resplendent golden armor. Surprisingly, it was the Raventail, Alexei. Behind Alexei, 4 people stood in a row, as if Alexei was their leader. They followed Alexei and walked over. The 4 people's appearances were very distinct. One of them was a short, fat man who looked very annoying. One of them was a young girl with eye-catching long red hair that was tied into 2 braids. She was dressed in a red dress. The other was a clown dressed like a magician, but on his back stood a dark brown little person. The last one was a man with black eyeshadow and black lipstick, with a face like a snake, giving off a gloomy feeling. The 4 people were all members of the Raventail. Including Alexei, the 5 people were the Raventail participants in the Great Demon Combat Arts competition. Noah more or less remembered the information about these people. The short fatty was called Narabutinku, and the magic he used was called Needle Explosion, which was a kind of magic that could make the arm full of needles and strengthen it, and its destructive power was comparable to that of an explosion. On the first day of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition, he was the one who appeared with Gray and Julian. The girl with crimson hair was called Freya, and the spell she used was called Crimson Hair. It was a spell that allowed her to freely manipulate her hair, making it longer or shorter at will. She could even make her hair as hot as fire to attack. She was Lucy's opponent on the first day of the Great Demonic Combat Tournament. The clown dressed like a magician was called Obra, and the magic he used was ominous, which had not been shown so far. He appeared in today's competition, but after Noah finished challenging the demon-subduing Hall, he directly forfeited, which was very mysterious. The man who looked as gloomy as a snake was called Black Snake, and the magic he used was called mimicry, which was a kind of magic that could change himself into other forms and manipulate them. Black Snake's mimicry target was sand, so he could freely turn into sand and manipulate the sand he transformed into. As for Alexei, his specific strength was unknown, his specific magic was unknown, and even his specific appearance and specific background were unknown. Today he was chosen to duel with Laxus, but just like Obra, he directly forfeited. To others, Alexei was very mysterious, even more mysterious than Obra. However, to Noah, Alexei's so-called mystery was just a joke. At this point, are you still going to hide? Noah glanced at Alexei and said with a smile, Ivan Doria. Alexei's footsteps suddenly froze and he stopped. However, Noah could imagine. Alexei's face under the mask at this time was very ugly. Under such circumstances, Noah said as if he was talking to himself, if you want to hide, then at least use some decent means such as directly using transformation magic to change into other people's appearance, and then use a magic tool to hide your own aura, to eliminate your own aura, that is called perfect. Wearing a set of broken armor and a broken mask, you can also hide your identity and participate in the Great Demonic Arts competition? Does the kingdom really intend to not let people violate the rules? The Great Demonic Arts competition that determined the guild ranking every year. It was a ceremony that every guild in the Fiori Kingdom could participate in. However, if you want to participate in this ceremony, you have to at least abide by 2 basic rules. 1. You must have the guild's coat of arms, and can only appear as a sorcerer of the guild. 2. The participant can't be the guild leader. Not abiding by the above 2 points is a violation of the rules. Alexei had blatantly violated the second rule. As early as during the preliminaries, Noah had already discovered this guy's true identity and underhanded means. Ivan had already attacked Noah and exposed his aura under Noah's sensing ability. When he appeared again, even if he covered his face and did not hide his aura, how could he hide from Noah? Therefore, Noah thought that the so-called Raventail was just a group of clowns. Seeing that his true identity was exposed as soon as he appeared, Alexei, no, it should be Ivan. After a moment of silence, he reached out his hand and took off the mask on his face. He stared at Noah with a gloomy expression and smiled coldly. No wonder you dare to say that humans can't be compared to you. You are indeed difficult to deal with. Whether I am difficult to deal with or not, until now you only know. Noah curled his lips. If that's the case, then I have really overestimated you. After that, Noah did not give Ivan any chance to reply and went straight to the point. You took the initiative to give up on the great magic battles today for this, right? Let the guy who instigated you come out. Ivan's expression stiffened when he heard this, but he still put on an act and said, What instigated me? I don't understand what you are talking about. As soon as Ivan finished his sentence, he immediately noticed that Noah was looking at him with a disdainful gaze. Are you trying to say that you were able to successfully attack Mira, Snow, and Lysana all because of the strength of your Raventail ? Noah said sarcastically. If that's the case, then I will honestly admit that I have underestimated your strength. The group of Raventail's magic shooters immediately showed anger on their faces. Noah's words were obviously looking down on them. Don't be too proud, little brat. Little brat. Ivan couldn't help but get angry and roared at Noah. Don't forget. We are in charge now. The person you want is in my hands. Then tell me where Snow is. Noah looked coldly at Ivan. I don't have much time to play games with you. Play games? Ivan's eyes widened slightly as he flew into a rage. You actually said that the plan that I have been plotting for so long is a game. Plotting? Noah looked away and said in a tone that made Ivan extremely angry. Forget it, I can't be bothered to waste time on you. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah suddenly shot out without any warning and appeared in front of Ivan at an astonishing speed. What? Ivan's expression changed drastically. However, before Ivan could react, Noah suddenly reached out and grabbed him by the neck, lifting him up and hanging him in the air. The group of Raventail's magic shooters were all shocked. In the next moment, a terrifying burst of mana rose from Noah's body. Chapter 1701. Boom! The terrifying mana that surged from Noah's body directly turned into a substantial shockwave that violently vibrated and sent the Raventail magic shooters that surrounded Ivan flying. The Raventail magic shooters that were sent flying did not even have time to scream before they crashed heavily onto the ground. The screams that reached their mouths turned into muffled groans as they fell to the ground and wailed incessantly. Purely by releasing his mana, Noah did not make a move at all, and the Raventail magic shooters had all fallen around him. Ivan, whose neck was being choked by Noah, had a change of expression on his face. But soon after, he was attacked by a sense of suffocation and let out an inaudible wail. Noah stared coldly at Ivan, who was struggling with all his might as his face gradually turned purple. He tightened his grip on Ivan's neck bit by bit, causing Ivan's feet that were lifted off the ground to thrash about wildly. However, Noah still tightened his grip on Ivan's neck bit by bit, causing Ivan's struggle to become weaker and weaker. Finally, his hands drooped down, and his eyes began to roll back. He looked like he was about to breathe in and out. It was only then that Noah released his grip on Ivan's neck and let Ivan fall to the ground with gravity. Cough, cough, cough. Ivan immediately covered his neck and coughed uncontrollably, as though he had just drowned and was gasping for air. You. Ivan looked up, panting wretchedly as he stared at Noah in disbelief, and opened his mouth in disbelief. How dare you do this to me? No matter what, Ivan had a hostage in his hands. It was because of this hostage that Ivan dared to bring his men and appear in front of Noah in an upright manner. Of course, it was not right to say that he was upright. In the beginning, Ivan was still hiding in the dark and looking for an opportunity to sneak an attack on Noah. He planned to take down Noah first to increase his chances of success. However, because he was discovered by Noah, Ivan's plan could only be declared a failure. However, Ivan was not afraid because he had a hostage in his hands. After he was discovered, he came out directly. Originally, in Ivan's imagination, Noah should now be humble and even kneel down to beg for mercy. Then he would raise the condition for Noah to exchange Lumen Starlight for Shuanai. Ivan never thought that this script would go wrong from the beginning. Noah actually attacked Raventail without any scruples when Ivan had a hostage in his hands. Was he not afraid that something would happen to the hostage? Looking at the look of disbelief on Ivan's face, Noah seemed to have seen through his puzzlement and sneered. That's right, I do want to find Shuanai, but not to the extent of being threatened by you. Anyway, I've already confirmed that there is at least one mastermind behind you. Moreover, you don't seem to be in cahoots but are just using each other. In that case, I'll just talk to that guy directly. I don't need to get any clues from you. Do you understand what I mean? Noah bent down and looked at Ivan condescendingly as he said sarcastically. In other words, you're completely useless. You're just being used as a pawn to die, idiot. After saying that, Noah raised a hand directly at Ivan. A magical circle suddenly spun out from Noah's palm and aimed at Ivan, who was paralyzed on the ground, gathering mana within. Wait! Ivan screamed in horror. You can't kill me! You can't kill me! Ignoring Ivan's screams, Noah's eyes didn't carry any emotions at all. The magical circle aimed at Ivan continued to gather mana, causing the magical circle to gradually emit a bright light. At this moment, an unprecedented shadow of death began to spread in Ivan's heart. Thus Ivan understood. Noah really intended to kill him. I've told you before, haven't I? Noah looked straight at Ivan, his eyes revealing a cold emotion. If I have the chance, I'll definitely kill you. The magical circle aimed at Ivan became brighter and brighter. Sensing the impending death, Ivan roared with his eyes bulging out of their sockets. Abra! Quick! Eliminate his mana! Suddenly, the dark brown figure on the body of Abra, who had fallen to the ground, violently shot out like a bullet towards Noah's direction. At the same time, the clown who was dressed like a magician collapsed and turned into a pile of clothes. That Abra was actually just a dummy. Squeak, squeak. The dark brown figure let out an animal-like cry with a treacherous smile on his face. He suddenly pounced on Noah and grabbed his shoulder tightly. Clang! In the next second, a magical circle lit up on the body of the dark brown figure. No one knew that Abra had the ability to eliminate the mana of any individual or even any target. If the target of this elimination magic was an individual, then all the mana in their body would be wiped clean in an instant. Therefore, Abra's magic had always been Ivan's trump card. Unfortunately, Ivan chose the wrong target to use it on. Wong! Accompanied by a trembling sound, a terrifying amount of mana was constantly released from Noah's body. Under the effect of Abra's elimination magic, it was being consumed at a terrifying speed. However, Noah did not resist at all under such a terrifying consumption. He glanced at the little dark brown figure on his shoulder, and his eyes were full of mockery. It was as if he did not care about the terrifying consumption of mana at all, and his expression remained calm from the beginning to the end. The treacherous smile on the figure's face froze. Ivan's expression became interesting all of a sudden. In the next instant, a hand suddenly reached out and grabbed the small dark brown figure, squeezing it tightly in the palm of his hand. I see. You're the real Abra. That clown is just an illusion. Noah stared at the shocked figure in his hand with a cold glint in his eyes. The magic that can eliminate mana. You're the one who did it to her, aren't you? There was finally a hint of anger in Noah's tone, and a surge of magic power surged in his hand that was holding the little dark brown figure. Bam! With a muffled sound, Noah fiercely clenched his fist, and the palm that was filled with surging magic power immediately crushed the dark brown dwarf. Blood splashed out and sprinkled on Ivan's face. Ah! Ivan let out a heart-wrenching scream. He wasn't grieving because of Abra's death. Instead, it was because Abra's death caused the shadow of death in his heart to explode. Then, the mana that gathered in the magic array in front of Noah's hand suddenly turned into a flash of light that instantly covered Ivan's entire body, causing him to be gradually annihilated in the beam of mana amidst his heart-wrenching screams. His body was smashed into pieces, leaving no trace behind. After the beam of mana that shot out from the magic array destroyed Ivan, it still streaked across the space without slowing down and landed on the terrified Narapudinku and the Black Serpent, annihilating the two rather outstanding magic shooters into nothingness. In the end, the beam of mana that shot out rubbed against the air and shot into the distance, disappearing at the other end of the horizon. Ivan, Narapudinku, the Black Serpent, and Abra were all dead. Only Freya was left. She sat there with a dull expression, as if she had lost her mind. She didn't react for a long time. Ignoring Freya's reaction, Noah retracted all the magic in his body, turned around, and looked in another direction. Alright, you've seen enough of the show. It's time to come out, right? As soon as he said this, a round of applause rang out. To be able to kill the person holding the hostage without batting an eyelid. Should I say, as expected of an existence that dares to claim that humans can't be compared to? A thick black fog suddenly rose and turned into a devilish man that appeared in front of Noah. Chapter 1702. Whoosh! No one knew when it started, but the cold wind started to blow again, blowing across the land in the suburbs. Noah and the evil man looked at each other. One's eyes were full of judgment, the other's eyes were full of evil. Both of them were silent, and no one spoke at the first moment. Not long after, Noah spoke indifferently. Who are you? Me? The evil man shrugged and said so. You can call me Luo. Luo? Noah frowned. For some reason, Noah felt that this guy who called himself Luo seemed to be strange. No, not strange, but his existence itself seemed to have some kind of inconsistency, as if there was a feeling of gears that couldn't be bitten, which made people feel very uncomfortable. Under such circumstances, Noah even had an illusion. He seemed to know the other party but also seemed to not know the other party. It was an indescribable illusion. Feeling that clear illusion, Noah's frown deepened. Noah, who couldn't get rid of this illusion, simply asked directly, Where is Xuanai? Hearing this, the evil man who called himself Luo suddenly smiled. Don't worry, Xuanai is very safe now. I've arranged for her to be in a place where no one can touch her. As long as you agree to my request, I'll immediately tell you her whereabouts. Request? Noah narrowed his eyes and curled his lips. Fine. Let me hear what you're planning to ask for by attacking my companions. Hearing Noah's sarcastic words, Luo smiled helplessly. You don't need to be angry and you don't need to be hostile to me. My request is actually very simple for you. I just feel that if I don't have any bargaining chips you wouldn't agree, so I let Xuanai come with me. I'm very sincere, Luo said as if he was implying something. Look, I only took Xuanai away and didn't do anything to your two fiancés, right? Let me make it clear, the one who attacked the girl named Lisana was not me, but the guy from Raventail. Law glanced at Freya, an evil and vicious smile appearing on his face. If you are not comfortable with this, I can help you get rid of the rest of the trash. Freya's face was instantly filled with fear. She maintained her paralyzed posture on the ground as she shuffled her body backward, shaking her head continuously. Don't kill me, don't kill me. Obviously, the girl named Freya was scared out of her wits. Okay. Just tell us what you're here for. Noah stared at Law. What is your purpose? My purpose is actually very simple. Law met Noah's gaze, and although the evil smile on his face did not change, the look in his eyes changed. Noah Dole, you can no longer participate in the next Great Demonic Combat Arts competition. As long as you agree to my condition, I will take you to see Xuanai immediately. Don't participate in the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition. Noah was stunned. Yes, don't participate in the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition. Law stared at Noah tightly and said this half-jokingly. Didn't you claim to be an existence that humans cannot be compared to? Then what is the point of competing with a group of weak humans? Can't you just leave the rest of your companions in the guild to do the rest of the things? Or do you have no confidence in your companions? Before, although Law's voice was full of evil charm, Noah did not feel much emotion from it. However, at this moment, Law's words carried some emotion, which surprised Noah a little. At this moment, Noah rolled his eyes and asked, why do you go through so much trouble to get me to withdraw from the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition? Could it be that you think I'm a threat to the victory of any team? Humph. Law snorted. The outcome of the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition has been decided at the beginning, as long as you don't participate. Law's firm tone made Noah puzzled. The outcome of the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition has been decided at the beginning? What does this mean? Also, as long as Noah doesn't participate, the result will not change? Why is Law so sure? For a moment, thousands of thoughts flashed through Noah's mind. However, even though there were many doubts, there was one thing that could be confirmed. That is, if Noah continues to participate in the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition, it will definitely cause some kind of obstacle to the guy in front of him who calls himself Law. Because of this, Law did not hesitate to kidnap Xuanai, and use this to make Noah compromise. However, it can be seen that Law is very afraid of Noah. Whether it was the power or the existence itself, Noah made Law feel a very strong fear and even vigilance. Therefore, Law also did not dare to completely provoke Noah. He just took Xuanai away and did not do anything to Mira and Lisana. If Law had done something to Mira and Lisana at this time, Noah may have already gone berserk and blasted him to pieces, right? It is because of this that Law did not completely offend Noah. As for the Raventail, it is purely a prop used by Law to test Noah's reaction. Law wants to see how Noah will treat the Raventail when Obra of the Raventail eliminates all of Lisana's magic and causes her to faint. If Noah chooses to compromise with the Raventail, then Law will not talk to Noah so nicely as he is now, and he will definitely use Xuanai to threaten Noah. Unfortunately, Noah had annihilated all the members of Raventail except for Freya, especially Obra, who had eliminated Lisana's magic power. He had crushed her to death without leaving any room for negotiation. In this way, Law does not dare to easily anger Noah, because that is not good for Noah and Law. Thinking of this, Noah asked abruptly, "What's in it for you if I don't participate in the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition?" Law was silent for a moment. Noah was not in a hurry, he just looked straight at Law, quietly waiting for his reaction. After a while, Law grinned and looked up at Noah. Well, if you really want to know everything, I can tell you everything, including the purpose of the existence of the Great Demonic Combat Arts Competition. Hearing this sentence, Noah's eyes suddenly flashed. So that's how it is. Noah said very calmly. It seems that you know what is going on with the phenomenon of magic being absorbed from the sorcerers one by one during the Great Demonic Combat Arts Competition. Have you noticed? Law said indifferently. It's just that it doesn't matter now. By this year's Great Demonic Combat Arts Competition, the magic needed for the Eclipse Plan has been gathered. Eclipse Plan? Noah asked. What's that? Do you want to know? Law raised his eyebrows and after a while said to Noah, if you want to know, then agree to my request. In that case, after the Great Demonic Combat Arts Competition is over, I will tell you everything. Hearing this, Noah understood. Lua would not reveal anything else. Let me remind you first, don't use the Raventail method on me. Law said as if he was on guard against something. If you intend to take me directly and ask me about the whereabouts of Shu and I and all the information about the Eclipse Plan, then I won't tell you even if I kill myself. Law's expression became extremely cold. It was not coldness toward Noah, nor was it coldness toward anyone else. It was coldness toward oneself. Then Law said this sentence. Don't think I can't do it. The Eclipse Plan is everything for me now. If it fails, then I might as well die. So, believe me, I can definitely do it. This time it was Noah's turn to be silent. After a long time, Noah lifted his feet and walked in the direction of Law. Law's whole body tensed up. However, Noah did not do anything to Law, but directly past him, back to back with Law, and spoke lightly. Well, let me see what you are going to do. Law's eyes lit up, and the evil smile returned to his face. Chapter 1703. After that, Law immediately took Noah and went to the location of Shu and I. Under the leadership of Law, Noah came to the venue of the Great Demonic War Dome Flatten. With Noah, Law walked into the venue and found a secret path. After a while they came to a huge cave. Noah, who came to the cave with Law, immediately saw it. In this cave there are countless huge corpses lying. This is... Noah looked around with surprise and astonishment in his eyes. Dragon's corpse? Yes. Law nodded. The corpses here are all the corpses of dragons, the corpses of dragons that have been around for hundreds of years. Hearing this, Noah turned his eyes directly to Law. Law naturally understood what Noah meant. Noah was asking Law to explain why there were so many dragon corpses here. For 100 years ago, the world was still dominated by dragons. Human beings were very weak compared to the powerful dragons. Law began to explain as he walked forward. However, not all dragons in the dragons who dominate the world regard human beings as insignificant ants. Some dragons are attracted by the rich feelings of human beings and hope to live with them. So the dragons have been divided into two factions. One faction wants to coexist with human beings, and the other faction advocates keeping human beings as livestock or food. They quarreled with each other and eventually launched a war between dragons. Law's voice became a little empty. The war between the dragons is extremely terrifying. Just one of them has the power to easily destroy a city. When all of them gather together to fight, the damage caused is simply unimaginable. The war between the two factions has been in a stalemate for a long time, and there has been no clear winner, so the war has been going on for a long time. Under such circumstances, sooner or later, the world will be destroyed in the hands of the dragons. In order to end the war and defeat the opposition, the dragons of the coexistence faction made a decision. Law glanced at Noah. That is, to teach the magic that can destroy dragons to human beings and let human beings participate in the war. Noah suddenly turned his gaze and looked at Law with a surprised look in his dark and deep eyes. Seems that you have guessed what magic it is. Law grinned. The magic that can destroy dragons, yes, that's the magic of the Dragon Slayer. That's how the Dragon Slayer magic appeared. The power of the Dragon Slayer magic, presumably, as a person in the same guild as the 4 Dragon Slayer magic, you should be very clear about it. Law's eyes twinkled slightly. Not to mention Wendy Mabel of the Sky Dragon, Naz of the Fire Dragon, and Gadgelulet Fox of the Iron Dragon have begun to gradually show their power. In this year's Great Magic Battle Arts competition, the so-called elites of the Magic Guide Guild, who can match those 2 people, can be counted on one hand, not to mention Lax's Dole of the Thunder Dragon, your brother. I'm afraid his strength is close to that of Jula of the Rock Iron, right? Noah nodded non-committally, but in his heart, he agreed with Law's words. The Dragon Slayer magic is indeed quite powerful. At least from the perspective of the field of magic, there are very few magic that can be compared to it except for super magic. After learning this kind of magic, not to mention Naz, Gadjaloo, and Laxus, even Wendy, who is only 14 years old, already has a certain degree of power, much stronger than the average mage. It is conceivable that the power of the Dragon Slayer magic is indeed much stronger than ordinary magic. If you think about it carefully, you can actually understand. There are so many guilds in the Fiori Kingdom, and Fairy Tail and Sabertooth were both known as the strongest guilds in the Fiori Kingdom for a period of time, above the rest of the guilds in the kingdom. Such two guilds must have gathered a lot of elites, and there must be a lot of excellent mages. However, even so, in the two guilds, the position of the Dragon Slayer Archmage had always been high. He either occupied the position of a frontline combat member, or was simply the strongest Archmage in the guild. This was enough to explain everything. However, human beings are very greedy creatures. Although the dragons of the Coexistence faction found that human beings have rich emotions and were attracted by this, they did not find that it is precisely because of the existence of rich emotions that there is darkness in the hearts of human beings that the dragons cannot match. Law seemed to be ridiculing the stupidity of the dragons of the Coexistence faction, and as if he was showing contempt for human beings, he spoke sarcastically. So, the desire of human beings who got power from the dragons also began to expand. When the victory of the Coexistence faction was in sight, even those dragons who wanted to coexist with human beings were killed. At this point, Law's tone became dignified. And among that group, a man used the Dragon Slayer magic to eliminate a large number of dragons, and finally, he grew scales and fangs and gradually became a dragon. A human turned into a dragon. Noah stood up in surprise. In this regard, Law gave a positive answer. That's right. That person turned into a dragon. You can treat it as a side effect of the Dragon Slayer magic, or as a mutation caused by slaughtering a large number of dragons. No one knows what the real situation is. I only know that the sleeping dragons here all died at the hands of that man. Noah's brows wrinkled tightly. Staring straight at Law's back, Noah was silent for a while, and then asked word by word. That man, who is he? Law stopped in his tracks. In the next second, Law slowly turned around and looked at Noah. His evil eyes filled with an indescribable light. That man, because he slaughtered all the dragons in the end, even he himself became a dragon with dark wings. Undoubtedly, he was a human, but he became the Dragon King. The war that gave birth to the Dragon King was called the Dragon King Ceremony. Law's voice sounded very clear. And the name of the Dragon King is Econarolia. When the familiar name came into Noah's ears, although Noah had some guesses in his heart, he still couldn't help but be speechless. However, if you think about it, it seems so natural. If it wasn't for the ability to slaughter all the dragons in the entire dragon clan, how could Econarolia have a 4-digit level of power? If it wasn't to this extent, with Noah's strength, how could he not even be able to take down a dragon? Econarolia, the black dragon who destroyed a huge country in Revelation. His real body is not only the Dragon King, who obliterated the dragon clan that dominated the world, but also a human who became a dragon. I heard that 7 years ago, Econarolia descended on your guild's holy land, Celestial Wolf Island, and almost annihilated all of you. You survived because of the protection of magic that can even freeze time. Law suddenly smiled. In that case, you should know the power of the Dragon King named Econarolia. With that said, Law turned around and continued to lead the way for Noah. Although Law didn't say it directly, Noah still heard a meaning from his words. Didn't you claim to be an existence that humans can't compare to? But if the opponent is Econarolia, there's nothing you can do, right? That was what Law wanted to say. Of course, Law didn't know. In the battle on Celestial Wolf Island 7 years ago, although Noah was protected and frozen by Mavis super magic, Econarolia also suffered a heavy blow. If Law knew about this, he wouldn't be so calm now, right? However, it is undeniable that Law did bring very important information to Noah. If he didn't know this information in the future, if he faced Econarolia, Noah would definitely suffer a big loss. Just when Noah was so glad, Law suddenly spoke. Well, we're here. Noah raised his head almost subconsciously and looked forward. Chapter 1704. In the depths of the cave full of dragon corpses, in a dark corner, Xuanai was leaning against the rock wall with her head down and her eyes closed. She seemed to have lost consciousness. Looking at Xuanai like that, Noah's heart tightened slightly. He quickened his pace past Law and came to Xuanai. He squatted down and checked Xuanai's breath. Don't worry, Xuanai just fainted. I didn't use any violent means on her. Law spread out his hands. Can you rest assured now? It seems that Law was very afraid of Noah, so he avoided angering Noah in all aspects, lest Noah get angry and really destroy him regardless of anything. From this point, it can also be seen that Law admitted that he was not Noah's opponent. However, that's not surprising. Not to mention Luo, I believe that no matter who it is, as long as they saw the amazing scene of Noah using the power of the heavenly sword of salvation in the great demon battle arts arena that day, they would not think that they could be a match for Noah. A divine sword that can even cut a star. In the face of this legendary level power, it's estimated that only a stupid guy like Jermaine can speak arrogantly. Noah could naturally see Law's fear of him, but he didn't completely believe the words of this evil guy. After checking Xuanai's physical condition and finding nothing unusual, he raised his head and looked at Law. Under Noah's gaze, Law also felt a little difficult to breathe. After all, now Noah has found Xuanai, and it's hard to guarantee that he won't do something to him. You don't want to break the promise you made, do you? Law's smile became a little forced. That's not what a strong person would do. Done by a powerhouse? Noah curled his lips. I don't think I have that kind of cultivation, but you should be glad that you really didn't do anything to the people around me. After that, Noah stopped looking at Law and took out the gift card. Clank! The dark gold gift card flashed, and a bottle of water appeared in Noah's hand. Opening the bottle cap, Noah fed the water into Snow's mouth bit by bit. Seeing this, Luokai confirmed that Noah really didn't intend to do anything to him. He unconsciously breathed a sigh of relief and said to Noah, From the looks of it, you seem to have brought enough food and water so I don't have to specially prepare them. Prepare food and water. Noah's hand movement paused and his eyes turned back to Law. In other words, you plan to let me and Xuanai continue to stay here? Hearing this, Law did not answer directly, but said this in a roundabout way. Although I don't think you'll go back on your word, in order to avoid any accidents, there's nothing wrong with you and Xuanai staying here before the Great Demon Combat Arts Exhibition competition ends, right? This sentence Law obviously said very insincerely. If he really believed that Noah would not break his promise, then Law would not let Noah stay in such a place. Don't you want to know the content of the solar eclipse plan? Law said as if he wanted to make the last insurance. As long as you stay here until the end of the Great Demon Combat Arts Exhibition competition, then when the Great Demon Combat Arts Exhibition competition is over, I will tell you everything. After that, Law's body was covered by a black shadow, turned into a black mist, and disappeared in place. Watching Law disappear in front of his eyes, Noah's eyes showed some thoughtfulness, and after a long time he curled his lips. Let's see what tricks you're going to play. In this way, the sky gradually brightened up. In the fairy tale hotel, everyone gathered here, not as loud as before, but whispered and discussed, and the atmosphere was very dignified. After a while, Elisha glanced out of the window, looked at the sky getting brighter and brighter, and sighed. It seems that Noah and Xuanai won't be able to come back in time. Elisha's words made the fairy tale group more or less silent. Makarov, sitting at the bar, crossed his arms, closed his eyes, and no one knew what he was thinking. After a long time, Makarov opened his eyes and said, Don't worry. Kana, in today's game, you will replace Noah and play with Team B. Everyone's eyes converged on Makarov's body. I have no problem. Kana rarely did not hold the bottle and frowned slightly. But Noah, don't you need to take care of him? Yes. Nazi stepped forward, clenched his fist and shouted at Makarov. At least let me help Noah. You'll just be a burden if you go. Gray said this indifferently. If there's something that even Noah can't solve, even if we go, it'll probably be useless, right? Hearing this, everyone looked a little helpless. It had to be said that Gray's words were very correct. If there's something that even Noah can't solve, even if the entire fairy tale group went with him, they still wouldn't be able to solve it, right? Only Alusha clearly saw that although Gray said this, his hands were clenched into fists. Obviously, although he said this, if it was really necessary, Gray would definitely be like Nazi and go to Noah's side without hesitation. How is brother Noah now? Wendy hugged Xia Lulu worriedly. I'm so worried. Don't worry. Mi stretched out her hand and pressed on Wendy's shoulder, the smile on her face still unchanged. Fitz Noah, he'll be fine. That's right. Lucy also comforted her. Noah is so strong. Not to mention humans, even dragons are different. If they can beat him, they'll be fine. Although this statement is very unpleasant, I also agree. Gajalu said intentionally or unintentionally. Undoubtedly, that guy is a human, but he's as strong as a monster. Even a Conarolia can't do anything to him. What else do we have to worry about? Ditto. Laxus closed his eyes and spoke in a seemingly leisurely manner. Instead of worrying about Noah, it's better to worry about our game today. Didn't Lord Noah entrust the game to us before he left? Julian whispered. Julian thinks that Lord Noah is telling us that even without him, we will never lose. Everyone looked at each other and laughed in unison. Julian is right, Makarov said. Noah entrusted the game to us. Since that's the case, we can't lose. Otherwise, we'll be betraying Noah's trust. Also, although we won't lose without Noah, we can't do without Noah, Makarov said. So, those who need to participate in the game focus on the game. As for the rest, some of you stay to take care of Lysana, and some of you go out to see if there are any clues to Noah and Shuanai's whereabouts. Remember, work as a team. No one can be left alone. Makarov's gaze swept across everyone present. That guy Ivan may still be watching us in secret, you know? Everyone nodded their heads and agreed. If that's the case. Naz raised his fist and his whole body burned with flames. I won't lose today's game. Not only today, we must obtain victory in the Great Devil Battle exhibition. Gray's mouth split into a grin. No matter who it is, bring it on. All of a sudden, everyone's fighting spirit was ignited. All right. Makarov jumped down from the bar and declared loudly. Let's get moving. Yes. Everyone's voices rang out in unison. Everyone followed Makarov's instructions. Some stayed to take care of the unconscious Lysana, while others went out to look for Noah. The contestants, on the other hand, headed towards the arena. Nobody noticed that a young fairy-like girl was floating on the ceiling of the inn. She looked at the group of people in the guild and smiled. Then she turned into a phantom and disappeared. Chapter 1705. Ladies and gentlemen, it's finally the 4th day of our Great Demon Combat Arts Competition. At this time, the Great Demon Combat Arts Competition has entered the countdown. After all, the competition only lasts for 5 days, but I believe that the contestants will continue to give us exciting performances. On the rostrum of the Great Demon Combat Arts Competition, Chapati was still reporting enthusiastically as usual, trying his best to stir up the atmosphere of the audience. However, although the audience's enthusiasm did not diminish, the contestants from the various large guilds were all looking in the direction of Fairy Tale B's contestant area, whispering to each other with puzzled expressions on their faces. In particular, in the contestant area of Sabretooth, Sting, Rog, Lucifer, Alyaga, and Maniba were all looking in the direction of Fairy Tale B's contestant area and looking at each other. Then Lucifer spoke. There's no doubt that Noah Doria is not here. He probably won't be appearing today. The reason why the magic shooters of the major guilds had been paying attention to the situation of Fairy Tale B's contestant area was because they realized that Noah was not there. It was probably the first time that such a commotion was caused because of a contestant's absence, right? However, it was understandable that it would turn out this way. Who asked Noah's performance to be so amazing in the past 3 days? Of course, Noah's movements had long become the focus of attention of the major guilds and even the great magic shooters. Now that they realized that Noah was not there, these people were naturally very puzzled and even started to discuss it. Why isn't he appearing? Rog, who was usually silent, could not help but speak. Could it be that something happened? Rog, your question is a little stupid, Sting said a little disinterestedly. With that guy's strength, how could something happen to him? Unlike before, now Sting and the others had truly experienced Noah's strength. Moreover, it was an unfathomable strength. So, to be honest, Sting did not think that anything had happened to Noah. Obviously, the others were thinking the same thing. In other words, the reason why that guy didn't appear was either because he was held back by something, or because he felt that there was no need to continue. Audiobook smacked his lips. I hope he's held back by something. Otherwise, it would be too unpleasant. Miniba didn't say anything as she listened to the conversation between Sting and the others. She only looked in the direction of Fairy Tale B, and an unfriendly smile gradually surfaced on her heavily made-up face. Forget it. No matter what the reason is, it's good that he didn't appear. Since that man took the initiative to give up the competition, then in this year's Great Demon Combat Arts Exhibition, our saber-tooth position will not be shaken. Hearing this, other than the Cold Rog, Sting, Lucius, and Audiobook also laughed. For Sabertooth, this year's Great Devil Combat Exhibition was undoubtedly full of misfortunes. And these disasters were all because of one person, Noah Dole. Now that Noah was no longer here, then in this year's Great Demon Combat Arts Exhibition competition, there was no one who could stop Sabertooth from reaching the top. At least, this was what the 5 people belonging to Sabertooth thought. Unfortunately, after today, these people who thought highly of themselves would realize a cruel fact. That was, even without Noah, the existence called Fairy Tale was not something that anyone could mess with. When the Great Demon Combat Arts Exhibition competition was in full swing, no one knew. Below the venue, in a cave full of dragon skeletons, 2 breaths rose and fell, leaving a faint trace of life in this silent space. Ugh! Accompanied by a soft moan, Xuanai slowly woke up from her sleep and opened her eyes. As soon as she opened her eyes, Xuanai saw an extremely ferocious dragon skeleton. At that moment, Xuanai's heart skipped a beat. She abruptly straightened her body and put one hand on her waist as if it was a conditioned reflex. Originally, all of Xuanai's star keys were there. However, when Xuanai stretched out her hand, she touched nothing. Immediately, Xuanai opened her eyes wide and felt around in a panic. Key? Where's my key? As a star spirit archmage without her key, Xuanai was no different from an ordinary girl. Of course, the reason why Xuanai was so flustered was not because she did not feel safe without her key. This seemingly strong, but actually very weak girl cherished her star spirit keys very much. As for why, there were 2 reasons. 1. Among those star spirit keys, there were Pisces, Libra, and Ophiuchus constellations that had accompanied Xuanai all these years. To Xuanai, they were her only companions before joining Fairy Tale. 2. Among those star spirit keys there were Aries, Gemini, and Scorpio constellations that Noah gave to Xuanai. Xuanai would never forgive herself for losing the key given by the person she yearned for. Therefore, Xuanai looked for her star spirit keys in a panic and looked around. Until then, Xuanai realized that there were huge dragon skeletons all around her. And in front of Xuanai, there was a piece of clothing. A piece of clothing that had just covered Xuanai's body fell to the ground as Xuanai straightened up. Looking at that piece of clothing, Xuanai was stunned. She picked it up and muttered with uncertainty. This seems to be Sir Noah's clothing? This question was answered in the next second. In the dark and deathly silent cave, a series of footsteps slowly sounded and attracted Xuanai's attention. Then, Xuanai saw it. In front, Noah was looking around and stroking the dragon skeletons as he walked over and noticed that Xuanai had woken up. Xuanai! Noah was stunned and walked towards Xuanai. Are you awake? Sir Noah. Xuanai's heart calmed down a little, but she still anxiously spoke. Sir Noah, did you see my star spirit key? Your star spirit key is with me. Noah took out a bunch of keys from his pocket and handed it to Xuanai. Because it fell on the ground, I temporarily put it away. Xuanai quietly let out a sigh of relief. She took the key and pressed it in front of her, looking at ease. It wasn't until this moment that Wenno recalled the current situation and looked at Noah hesitantly. Sir Noah, why are we here? What? Noah squatted down and looked at Xuanai. Did you forget what happened before you lost consciousness? Xuanai began to recall. Not long after, Xuanai's hand that was holding the star spirit key tightened as he spoke with some uncertainty. I was attacked? Yes. Noah nodded. Then I came to look for you. What about Lady Mira and Lady Lisanna? Xuanai panicked. Are the 2 ladies all right? Mira and Lisanna are fine. Don't worry. Noah held Xuanai's hand and motioned for her to calm down. Lasana's mana was drained, but that's it. As for Mira, she should be in a competition now. Nothing happened that you need to worry about. Competition? Xuanai was surprised. Then Sir Noah, you. Alright. I know you have a lot of questions. Noah sighed. I will explain everything to you. Don't worry. Xuanai nodded uneasily. Then Noah explained what happened after Xuanai fainted. Knowing that Noah gave up on participating in the Great Demon Battle exhibition because of her, Xuanai's face paled. Chapter 1706. Seeing that Xuanai's face had lost all color, Noah was shocked. Xuanai? What happened to you? Are you not feeling well? Xuanai didn't care about Noah's question. Her body started to shrink and her face became paler and paler. Originally, Xuanai was sitting on the ground and leaning against the wall. The moment she shrank her body, Xuanai was like a helpless child, shrinking into a ball. My fault. Xuanai hugged her knees, her eyes starting to lose focus. It's all my fault. At this moment, Xuanai's heart was filled with despair. As mentioned before, Xuanai was a weak and self-abased young lady. Actually, in Xuanai's eyes, she had always been a person who brought misfortune to others. Since young, the people who accompanied Xuanai, those who were friendly to Xuanai, almost none of them had a good ending. For example, Xuanai's family met with misfortune. In the end, only Xuanai escaped. Another example, Noah saved Xuanai and gave Xuanai a new life. In the end, on Skywolf Island, Noah also encountered a Conarolia. Together with his companions in the guild, they were all frozen for an entire 7 years. Misfortune after misfortune, disaster after disaster, they all happened to the people around Xuanai. In this way, how could Xuanai not feel inferior? And this time, Xuanai finally found a new home, and was warmly accepted by the people of Fairy Tale. In the end, because of Xuanai, Noah not only agreed to not participate in the Great Demon Martial Arts competition, but also stayed here to accompany her, leaving her companions in Fairy Tale to fight alone. If because Noah didn't participate in the competition, Fairy Tale lost this year's Great Demon Martial Arts competition, then who was to blame? Noah and the others suffered for 7 years, protecting their companions in the guild with difficulty, and their wish to regain their former glory was broken. Then who was to blame? Thinking of this, Xuanai could only think of one reason. It's all my fault. Xuanai seemed to have lost her soul, muttering helplessly and hopelessly. It's all my fault. In the endless self-blame, Xuanai thought of Mira and Lisanna again. In the attack last night, in order to save Xuanai and Lisanna, Mira pushed the 2 girls away and was trapped by the black fog. If it wasn't to save Xuanai and Lisanna, with Myra's strength, Mira wouldn't have been trapped so easily. Then all of mana she and Xuanai's. That's also my fault, my fault. Xuanai hugged his head and muttered in pain. Those who follow me will all meet with misfortune, will all. Xuanai's right, nice, S of's color, S hers, S's face, her, S writes is, her. Xuanai, nai. It's my fault. Xuanai acted as if he didn't hear anything and muttered in a daze. It's all my fault. Noah was speechless as he watched Xuanai fall into endless self-blame. He raised the hand that was grabbing Xuanai's slender shoulder and held Xuanai's cheek, raising Xuanai's face to face him. Xuanai. Noah looked into her eyes. Look at me. However, Xuanai still didn't react to Noah's words. Her eyes were still unfocused. If this continued, Noah felt that Xuanai would lose all her emotions. That wasn't a joke. Magic came from the heart. Therefore, this was also one of the reasons why Noah lost control of his magic power when he was a child, when he was irritable. Of course, it was the same for others. Mira, for example, had come into contact with demons when she was young, and awakened a magic that could receive demonic power. That was another example. If Mira hadn't met Noah at that time and joined Fairy Tale, she would have lost her heart sooner or later. She would have been devoured by magic and become a real demon. Now Xuanai's heart was filled with negative emotions. It was also possible that her magic would go out of control and she would become a walking corpse. Xuanai! Xuanai! Noah patted Xuanai's cheeks, but it didn't have any effect. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "You idiot!" As soon as he finished speaking, Noah abruptly held up Snow's face and lowered his head. In the next moment, Noah kissed Xuanai and captured her lips. Xuanai's eyes widened. The sudden forceful kiss finally caused this young lady, who had nearly lost her mind, to recover. Her unfocused eyes once again began to gather. Her eyes were filled with disbelief as she looked at Noah's face, which was just inches away from her. At this moment, Noah pried open Xuanai's lips and teeth with ease. He captured the tip of Xuanai's tongue and rolled it up with his tongue like a madman. Xuanai's body went limp. She pressed her hands against Noah's chest and weakly endured Noah's domineering kiss. Her heart began to tremble. The intimate contact with the person she longed for caused Xuanai's mind to go blank. Her face that had originally lost its color gradually became rosy, and even her breathing began to become a little rapid. Under such circumstances, Xuanai passively endured Noah's powerful kiss. Her tongue was tightly entangled by Noah and she couldn't resist at all. Before long, Xuanai began to feel suffocated. Only then did Noah let go of Xuanai and let go of her lips. Xuanai stared blankly at Noah's face that gradually moved away. She subconsciously raised her hand and covered her mouth. She looked at Noah as if she was dreaming. She still couldn't believe it all. Of course, Xuanai didn't dislike Noah. Rather, it was the opposite. She even felt that she wasn't good enough for Noah. Now, after being kissed by Noah in such a domineering way, Xuanai only felt like she was dreaming. Everything became extremely unreal. However, Noah held Xuanai's face and made her look at him. He stared into her eyes and said, "Listen carefully. Listen carefully. Your so-called saying that you will bring misfortune to the people around you, in my opinion, is simply the world's biggest joke." Xuanai was stunned. Let's not talk about the past for now. But right now, I can tell you very clearly that even if you can bring misfortune to others, it has no effect on me at all, Noah said firmly. I have to shoulder the misfortune of thousands of worlds, and I have to fight against the source of all misfortune. Even so, the world still cares for me, and has never let any misfortune happen to me. You want to affect me with your misfortune alone? Don't make me laugh my head off. Xuanai didn't understand Noah's words at all. However, Xuanai was not an idiot. She still understood one thing. That was, Noah seemed to be carrying something that was even heavier than her misfortune alone. It was so heavy that Xuanai couldn't even imagine the responsibility. I will only say it once, so you have to listen carefully. Undoubtedly, you have to listen clearly. Noah looked straight into Xuanai's eyes that were shaking because of her wavering. The person who decided not to participate in the Great Demon Battle exhibition was me. The person who decided to stay here with you was also me. Although you are part of the reason, it is not entirely your fault. If you continue to blame yourself like this, then I will really get angry. Sir Noah. Xuanai looked at Noah in a daze and said almost subconsciously, "But the people who are with me will all have misfortune. The closer the person is to me, the more misfortune will happen. It has always been. So that is a joke." Noah's hand that was holding Xuanai's face tightened slightly. If that is really the case, then I would like to see what kind of misfortune will happen to me who is close to you. After saying that, Noah lowered his head again and captured Xuanai's lips. Their tongues intertwined. This time, Xuanai was completely intoxicated. She timidly and uneasily responded to Noah's domineering kiss. Her heart was lost. Chapter 1707. In the dragon graveyard that was so dark that not a single ray of light could be seen, the cold air spread slightly as if it symbolized eternity, making this space present an indescribable deathly stillness. However, the cold air and the eternal deathly stillness did not extinguish the warmth of the man and woman in this space. Instead, the two of them felt a different kind of heat from the surroundings. His breath hit the air, causing that small area of air to gradually become scorching hot. Noah and Xuanai hugged each other, leaning against the rock wall in the deepest part of the cave. They felt each other's heartbeat, not feeling that this space was very cold at all. Noah kept hugging Xuanai like this, caressing her soft hair while kissing her smooth cheeks and lips, making Xuanai's delicate body tremble slightly. Xuanai could only respond passively, feeling like she was in a dream. Her beautiful face was slightly red, leaning in Noah's embrace, as if she did not have the slightest bit of strength, not moving at all. After maintaining this state for who knew how long, Noah finally stopped, gazing at Xuanai's moist eyes and slightly red face, softly saying, "Now our relationship is close enough, right?" Being stared at by Noah's pitch-black deep eyes, Xuanai's beautiful face became redder and redder, and she lowered her head in embarrassment, feeling shy and ashamed. "Sorry, Lord Noah," Xuanai said softly. "I actually showed such a weak appearance in front of you, I really don't have the face to see you again. There is no need to feel ashamed." Noah continued to stroke Xuanai's head and said, "Although there is nothing wrong with being strong, being weak is not a sin. You are only an ordinary girl. Sometimes, learning to rely on others is very important." "Is that so?" Xuanai nodded as if she did not fully understand, softly murmuring, "I feel like I have been saved by Lord Noah again." Noah smiled faintly, extended his hand, and gently brushed it across Xuanai's lips, speaking frankly, "There is nothing bad about it, right? No matter when, a kiss from a beautiful girl is the best gift to any man. I have indeed received this gift, haven't I?" "How? How can that be?" Xuanai's pretty face reddened again, and she said with some panic, "For someone like me, even if Lord Noah dotes on me so much, it can't be considered a thank you gift." "Oh." Noah raised his eyebrows and said with a faint smile, "In other words, a kiss isn't enough to thank me? How are you going to thank me?" With that, Noah moved his mouth close to Xuanai's ear and whispered in a low voice, "For example, give me something more important than a kiss?" "Something more important than kissing." Xuanai's heartbeat began to speed up, and her face was already completely red. In the end, Xuanai could only mutter in a voice even softer than a mosquito, If Lord Noah thinks that someone like me can do it." At this point, Noah should have understood Xuanai's intentions no matter how stupid he was. Obviously, at this point, no matter what Noah wanted to do to the girl in his arms, she wouldn't have any objections. In short, Xuanai's current state was in a state where Noah could do whatever he wanted to her. And Noah wasn't Lu Xiaohui, so it was impossible for him not to be moved. It's a pity that the location isn't right. Noah pinched Xuanai's little nose, who was extremely shy. "Let's do the rest after we return." Hearing this, Xuanai finally remembered what kind of environment they were in, and what kind of situation she was in and what kind of words she said. Thus, shame surged into Xuanai's heart all of a sudden, making her feel too ashamed to face anyone. She could only speak with a red face. Then let's hurry back." Noah was a little embarrassed and said teasingly, "Are you that anxious to give yourself to me?" "No, it's not like that." Xuanai shook her head with a red face. "I mean, we should hurry back now, my companions are still in the competition." "That's right." Noah stopped smiling and raised his head to look up. "My companions are in the competition, so leave the rest to me." Xuanai was a little shocked, and asked with uncertainty, "Lord Noah, are you not going back to the competition? Elisha and the rest are enough for the competition." Noah narrowed his eyes. Compared to the competition, the inside story of the Great Demon Battle Exhibition is undoubtedly more important. I have to find out what's going on with the solar eclipse plan. Otherwise, there might be a disaster that will drag everyone into it. "Does Lord Noah intend to stay here?" Xuanai asked after a moment of silence. "Until after the Great Demon Battle Exhibition is over?" "That's right." Noah nodded. "That guy named Law seems to be planning something. For this reason, he did not hesitate to expose himself in front of me, capture you here, and threaten me with death. He definitely has a big plan. Moreover, behind him there seems to be the shadow of the kingdom. This year's Great Demon Battle Arts Exhibition tournament is full of mysteries. If these mysteries are not solved, no one knows what will happen. Originally, it would take a lot of effort to solve these mysteries, but that guy called Law is just too confident. He seems to think that once the Great Demon Battle Exhibition is over and his plan succeeds, then I will no longer be able to do anything." Noah pursed his lips and smiled. "So, as long as I stay here, that guy will definitely confess everything to me when the Great Demon Battle Exhibition is over. Since that's the case, there's no need for me to investigate on my own. I'll just wait for him to reveal everything himself." "But what about the Great Demon Battle Exhibition?" Xuanai asked worriedly. "Without Noah-sama's participation, can the lords in the guild win? It should be known that in this year's Great Demon Battle Exhibition, not only is there the saber tooth, who has always been the champion in the past, but there are also unimaginably strong enemies in the other guilds. For example, in this year's Great Demon Battle Exhibition, only Noah can firmly suppress the saber-tooth of the Lamia scale. Another example is Kagura of the Mermaid Heel, who is known as the strongest sorcerer in this year's Great Demon Battle Exhibition besides the saber-tooth. Her strength must be very strong. In the other guilds like the Cotter Cerberus, there are also S-rank sorcerers who can compete with Alusha. And although the sorcerers of the Blue Pegasus aren't very strong, the application of magic is very diverse and suitable for all kinds of situations, so they can't be underestimated. In addition, there is also the Raventail who is secretly watching the fairy tale. Without Noah's participation, the situation won't be very good, right? In this regard, Noah has a different opinion. Maybe without my participation, the situation won't be as smooth as before, but that doesn't mean that our guild's situation is very bad. Noah said. Although the saber-tooth is very strong, Laxus should be able to barely match him. Kagura naturally can't be ignored, but we also have Alusha and Mira. Although the other guilds are also difficult to deal with, it's a pity that in terms of difficulty, our guild is definitely not weaker than the other guilds. As for the Raventail, Noah smiled indifferently. That guild no longer exists. No longer exists? Yukino suddenly froze. Noah didn't explain and just hugged the weak and cute girl. He raised his head and looked up, the corners of his mouth rising little by little. Presumably, the Great Demonic Combat Arts Exhibition will cause quite a bit of chaos because of Raventail's absence, right? Yukino blinked, obviously not understanding. However, Noah's trust in the guild also affected Yukino, making her feel relieved and silently cheering for her guild. Chapter 1708. Just as Noah expected, because Raventail had not arrived for a long time, everyone in the venue was talking about it. In the two contestant areas of Fairy Tale, everyone had gathered together to discuss this matter. In the end, there was only one conclusion that everyone came to. It seems that something must have happened to Raventail. Alusha said thoughtfully. If the person who attacked Mira and Lisanna yesterday and took Shu and I away is Raventail, then the reason why that guild is not here is most likely that Noah has taken care of them, right? This was the conclusion that everyone came to. After all, this was the only conclusion that was consistent with the current situation. But if that's the case, Noah, who has taken care of Raventail, should be able to come back. Gray said. Now Noah hasn't come back yet. There should be a deeper reason, right? In other words, Lucy hesitated for a while and said tentatively, the whereabouts of Noah and Raventail are unknown. It's very likely that they are together now or even fighting. How could that be the reason? Gadjaloo curled his lips. I don't think a Raventail would be able to hold that guy back for so long. Hearing Gadjaloo's words, everyone looked at each other and nodded in agreement. Obviously, no one believed that the power of the Raventail was enough to keep Noah out for the entire night. There must be a deeper reason for this. It's really troublesome. Nazi held his head and looked unhappy. If you want to have a showdown, why don't you just come and find trouble with us in a fair and square manner? Why do they have to make things so troublesome? It's because there's no chance of winning in a head-on confrontation that those people would do such a thing. Lucy warned. Nazi, don't mess around anymore. The president is already making arrangements. We just need to focus on our game. Lucy is right. Alusha nodded and looked around at everyone. In any case, it's better that Ivan's guild is not here. This way we don't have to worry about what they will do in secret. However, as soon as this sentence fell, another voice sounded. It's a pity that Ivan's guild is not here. For us it's not just a good thing. With that said, Makarov, dressed in a suit, walked out of the corridor in front of everyone. There's a piece of news that I don't know if it's good or bad, Makarov said with a serious expression. Because Raventail didn't show up, and no one was found at the hotel they were staying at, the organizers have decided to disqualify Raventail from the competition. Everyone immediately burst into laughter. Only Wendy tilted her head and asked in confusion. But why don't we know if this news is good or bad? Because after disqualifying Raventail, the number of teams participating in the competition will be reduced to 7. This way, putting aside the competition part, there will be no way to pair up for the duel part. Makarov sighed. So the organizers have decided to let us combine Team A and Team B, and choose a new team to participate in the competition. This news made everyone frown. Combine the teams. That was not a good thing for Fairy Tale, who had the upper hand. After all, originally, if two teams participated in the competition together, the chances of winning would increase. Now that they were combined, Fairy Tale's advantage was gone. However, currently, Team A and Team B were in first and second place respectively. This was an advantage that could not be ignored. After the combination, how will the points be calculated? Laxus looked at Makarov, crossed his arms, and asked calmly. Although the two teams are in first and second place respectively, the points won't be the same, right? This has already been decided. Makarov said helplessly. After the combination, we will use the results of the team with the lower score. At this moment, everyone frowned. One must know that Team B had 44 points, while Team A only had 37 points. There was a difference of 7 points. Sabretooth, who was in third place, scored 34 points. If they were to use the results of the team with the lower score, then the gap between Fairy Tale and Sabretooth would be much smaller. It would be very easy for them to surpass each other. Isn't this unfair to us? Zhu Bian said angrily. Even if we combine our teams, we should use the results of the team with the higher score. That's right. Karna also nodded. Two of our guild's teams have passed the qualifiers and obtained the qualifications to participate in the official competition. Now they're merging our teams without permission. Not only are they destroying our advantage, but they're also trying to make it even smaller. Are the organizers deliberately suppressing us to make the competition more exciting and suspenseful? Maybe that's part of the reason. Makarov raised his head and looked at everyone present. But the bigger reason should be that the organizers are suspicious of us, right? Suspicious. Everyone was stunned. Only Alusha understood what Makarov meant. I see. Alusha narrowed her eyes. Because Noah wasn't present, the organizers are suspecting that our guild let Noah attack Raventail to eliminate the competition. Is that against the rules? That's right. Makarov stroked his beard. But that's just suspicion at best. So, the organizers didn't disqualify us from the competition. Instead, they let us combine and use the results of the team with the lower score. They are probably trying to cover up this matter. Cover up? Lucy couldn't help but interject. That can't be considered a suspicion, but it's basically confirmed that Noah did something to the Raventail. It can't be helped. Our guild has too many connections with Ivan's guild. Moreover, before the Great Magic Combat Arts competition started, Noah and Ivan had an argument on the street. They have enough reason to think that we did it. Makarov spread his hands. Besides, do you really think that Ivan's guild not being present has nothing to do with Noah? Everyone immediately shut their mouths. So, the organizers are already giving us face by not disqualifying us from the competition. Makarov raised a finger. Now let's regroup the team. So, after some discussion, Lucy, Wendy, Kana, Julian, and Mira withdrew from the competition. A new team was formed by Alusha, Naz, Gray, Gadjaloo, and Laxus. Originally, in terms of combat power, Mira should also be selected, but Mira was still worried about Lisanna in the hotel, so she took the initiative to give up her position and return to the hotel to take care of Lisanna. After regrouping the team, today's competition could finally begin. And the person who appeared in the competition was Alusha. Alusha, who walked into the venue, suddenly felt a very strong gaze. She raised her head and looked over. She saw that in front of her, Maniba was staring at Alusha, revealing an unpleasant smile, and said so. Without that monster, can the sprite still defeat the tiger? Hearing this, Alusha's eyes flashed, and a strong smile full of determination appeared on her face. It's a pity that our guild is filled with monsters, Shifeng said, shaking his head. Maniba's eyes narrowed and her smile became cold. Chapter 1709. The competition had officially begun. However, as soon as Chabadi announced the start of the competition from the rostrum, all the spectators fell silent. They looked at each other with a confused look on their faces. Not only the spectators, but even the magic shooters from the major guilds looked at the battle in the center of the field in amazement. They were somewhat unable to react. Taking a closer look, a huge water ball with a diameter of more than 100 meters was suspended in the air. In the huge water ball there were two girls in swimsuits. One was wearing a bold red bikini, showing off her perfect figure, but she was looking at Alusha with a dignified face. The other one was wearing a conservative swimsuit like a training suit. She was floating in the water with a victorious smile on her face. Aside from Alusa and Maniba, the other contestants from the other guilds were lying on the ground outside the giant water sphere. They were also wearing swimsuits, and their bodies were soaking wet. They all had blank looks on their faces. Looking at this strange situation on the platform, Chapati was extremely surprised and puzzled. At the beginning of the competition, except for contestant Alusha from Fairy Tale and contestant Maniba from Sabertooth, all the other contestants fell out of the field and were directly eliminated. What the hell is going on? Chapati's report made all the spectators talk about it. Only Alusha, who was in the water ball, still looked at Maniba with a dignified face and said in a deep voice, "What did you do?" The fourth day of the Great Magic Battle Arts exhibition was a naval battle. As the name implied, although the battle was not in the sea, the contestants were required to enter the water ball in the center of the venue to fight and find ways to stay in the water ball. Once they were hit by the huge water ball, they were considered to be eliminated. The first person to come out of the water ball was the last person. The second person to be hit out was the second to last person. And so on until the third person was born when there were only 2 people left in the water ball. From then on, the special rules were used. The so-called special rule referred to the 5-minute rule. When there were only 2 people left in the water ball, a 5-minute countdown would begin. Within the next 5 minutes, if one of the remaining 2 people was hit by a water ball, that person would fall to the last place. If the remaining 2 did not get hit by the water ball after 5 minutes, then even if one of them was hit, he would still be able to get second place. The organizers probably wanted to make the competition more interesting, so they used such a rule. However, no one expected that. As soon as the competition started, apart from Alusha and Maniba, all the other contestants from the other 4 guilds mysteriously fell out of the water ball. Everyone was puzzled by this unbelievable situation. However, Alusha could feel it clearly. At the start of the match, a very special magic emerged from Maniba's body. Therefore, there was no doubt that all of this was Maniba's doing. In other words, in just a moment, Maniba used a method that even Alusha was not aware of to eliminate the rest of the contestants, and only Alusha remained. To this, Maniba just laughed. "This is my magic. A magic that manipulates space." "A magic that manipulates space?" Alusha was slightly startled, but she immediately understood. "Don't tell me, you can use magic to manipulate space and teleport as you wish?" "That's it." Maniba raised one hand, and then on that hand, a wave of space began to vibrate, condensing into a ball of light. "It's not just me. As long as it's within my sight, I can use this magic to move everything I want. Once the competition starts, I'll throw out all those fellows who are in my way. How about that? Very good magic, right?" Hearing Maniba's words, the surrounding audience suddenly understood. However, not only did Alusha not feel relieved, her pretty face became more and more tense, and her gaze towards Maniba became extremely sharp. "If that's the case, why don't you teleport me out as well? That way you'll win, right?" "Not just win. As long as Maniba teleported Alusha out now, then under the rule of 5 minutes, Alusha would directly fall to the last place. For Sabertooth, who had been hostile to Fairy Tale, wasn't this the situation that they wanted to see the most? However, Maniba teleported the rest of the contestants out, but left Alusha alone, and didn't teleport her out, letting the 5 minutes continue to pass. Could it be that Maniba wanted to humiliate Alusha by teleporting her out at the last moment of the 5 minutes? Directly teleporting you out and making you the last place, that's not bad. Maniba smiled rather coldly. Unfortunately, that'd be too boring. Boring? Alusha's pair of eyes began to gradually condense. "Is it because of this reason that you deliberately let me stay?" "That's right," Maniba admitted frankly, but the words that came out of her mouth made people's hearts turn cold. "Isn't your fairy tale very powerful? Isn't there an existence that humans can't compare to? But you can't be thinking of taking the title of the strongest from us by yourself, right? Then let me see what kind of ability you have. Our Sabertooth is the strongest." Maniba looked at Alusha with extremely cold eyes. "Want to take away our title of the strongest? Just a little fairy, don't be too complacent." The audience suddenly became silent. Alusha just stared at Maniba. After a long while, she relaxed her body, and her eyes became sharp. You didn't teleport me out of the arena at the first moment, but you still openly explained the effect of your magic to me. Who is the one who is complacent? I'll prove it to you. As soon as her voice fell, clank, Alusha's body suddenly bloomed with dazzling light. Seeing this scene, Maniba's smile became vicious. She raised one hand, and a wave of magic light gathered in her hand, emitting bursts of spatial fluctuations. At this moment, Alusha, whose whole body bloomed with dazzling light, moved. Accompanied by a faint sound of breaking through the air, Alusha's figure disappeared in place, turning into a dazzling light shadow. With an extremely terrifying speed, she drew a perfect arc in the water and violently shot toward Maniba's direction. Maniba, who was preparing to slowly torture Alusha to vent her anger, was shocked. However, before Maniba could react, the light shadow rushed to her back and fiercely hit Maniba's body. Bang! Even in the water, a muffled sound could be clearly heard. Maniba, who suffered a heavy blow, directly spat out the air in her mouth, and her whole body flew backward. After a while she reacted, trying to stabilize her body, and suddenly raised her head and looked forward. There, Alusha's figure slowly appeared from the dazzling light. However, Alusha's red bikini swimsuit had disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by an animal costume. It was a costume that looked like a cat and a leopard with animal ears on the head. Wearing this animal costume, Alusha held two night swords in her hands, and a pair of eyes suddenly opened. Then, under Maniba's gaze, she turned into a phantom, like an arrow leaving the bow, and once again violently shot out. That speed was just like a torpedo in the water, leaving only a faint trace, and stirring up a surge of water. Maniba turned pale with fright, and directly swept over her body. Poochie! In the tearing sound, a sword light cut through Maniba's side abdomen, and Maniba let out a scream. Chapter 1710. What? In the contestant area of Sabertooth, Sting, Logue, Lucifer, and Ayaga watched as Maniba's side was slashed by the sword light in the water ball. They all turned pale with fright as Maniba let out a cry of pain. On the contrary, when the audience saw the sudden change in the situation, they all began to cheer. Under such circumstances, in the water ball, Alusha, who was dressed like a wild animal, directly turned into a flash of light. Like lightning, she repeatedly dashed through the water at a speed that couldn't be seen by the naked eye. It was as if she came from all directions, and the sword light slashed Maniba's body one after another. Poochie poochie poochie. A series of tearing sounds resounded. Ah! Maniba's scream resounded. After being slashed repeatedly by Alusha, who had turned into a flash of light, Maniba felt a sharp pain all over her body. This girl with a somewhat twisted personality, whose face was covered with heavy makeup, began to show a trace of pain. The sharp pain from all over her body finally made Maniba react. She tightly bit her lips and her face twisted. Damn it! After angrily shouting, Maniba fiercely spread out her hands, and a wave of magic light fluctuated in her hands. Suddenly, one wave of magic light after another appeared around Alusha, who had turned into a flash of light. Moreover, the magic inside began to riot. In the next moment, the magic light waves exploded one after another. Bang 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 bang. Accompanied by a series of explosions, the magic light waves turned into the most direct impact. Like bombs, they exploded one after another, setting off waves of turbulence in the water. Not only could Maniba's magic be used to control space, but she could also change the properties of the space that her magic was used on. For example, if he added the fire attribute like just now, the space controlled by Maniba would directly turn into heat and explode like a bomb. The destructive power and lethality would be very strong. However, in the face of those continuous explosions, Alusha was like a flash of lightning. She was extremely fast, constantly dodging the exploding space. She was flashing in the turbulence and wasn't affected at all. So fast. Maniba's expression changed. At this moment, Alusha swept through space again. The night sword in her hand suddenly flashed, and the sword light once again slashed through Maniba's body. Poochie! With another tearing sound, Maniba's shoulder was fiercely slashed. The sharp pain assaulted her mind, causing Maniba to scream out in pain. For a moment, Maniba was completely unable to do anything to Alusha. She endured the slashes from all directions, and continuously let out miserable cries. How? How is this possible? In the contestant area of Saber-Tooth, Sting tightly grasped the railing, his eyes full of disbelief. Milady can't even fight back against that Alusha Chocolito? No, the problem lies with Alusha Chocolito's armor. Lucius' expression became serious. Alusha Chocolito uses magic to change equipment. She can change equipment at will. Right now, the armor she's wearing is called flying armor. It can increase the user's speed by several levels. So, Milady's magic can't catch up with that woman. Audiobook was also shocked. Is that Alusha Chocolito really that strong? Alusha Chocolito is indeed very strong, but in my memory, she's not strong enough to make Milady unable to fight back. Lucius stared at the huge water ball in midair and said in a deep voice, "There must be some other reason." Rog also stared at the water ball that was constantly transforming into flashes of light that swept past Meniba's body. After a while, Alusha suddenly widened her eyes as she slashed at Meniba's body one after another, causing sword lights to shoot out from all directions and slash at Meniba's body. After a long while, she suddenly opened her eyes wide. Alusha Chocolito's weapon isn't an ordinary weapon. Hearing Roger's voice, everyone was shocked. It wasn't until this moment that they realized with difficulty. In Alusha's hand, which was constantly sweeping through space like a flash of light, one of the two knight swords looked like a fish's fin. It was dark green all over. "That's," Lucius said in shock. "In my memory, that seems to be a weapon that goes with Sea Emperor's armor." As soon as this was said, everyone immediately understood. Alusha didn't just use the flying armor that could provide super high speed. She also used the Sea Emperor's armor that had a great resistance to water. That water attribute magic weapon completely cut through the resistance and pressure of water, allowing Alusha to walk as if she was walking on flat ground, and could increase her speed by several levels. On the contrary, Meniba was hindered by the resistance of water, and her movements were somewhat sluggish. With one increasing and one decreasing, Meniba simply couldn't adapt to Alusha's super high speed, and could only passively endure the attacks. Poochie! The sword light was like lightning. With the support of the flying armor, it quickly slashed through Meniba's body, causing Meniba to be heavily injured and covered in cuts and bruises. In the midst of the screams, Meniba heard Alusha's indifferent voice. "If you had used your magic to teleport me out from the beginning, then I definitely wouldn't have been able to beat you in this battle. Unfortunately, you were too confident in your own strength and your own advantages. Now your magic can't catch up with me at all, and in the water you can't be unaffected like me. This is the result. Your arrogance led to your defeat, Meniba." While speaking, Alusha, who had turned into a flash of light, suddenly flashed behind Meniba. Her body spun, and one of her legs was like a whip, violently lashing out. Along with a surge of water, it heavily whipped Meniba's side waist. Bang! In the midst of the muffled sound, Meniba screamed again. Her whole body was sent flying by the powerful leg whip. In the end, Meniba flew out of the water ball and fell heavily on the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood. "The battle is over." Chapati immediately raised the microphone and announced loudly. On the fourth day of the Great Demon Martial Arts Competition, the reorganized Team Fairy Tale won first place in the sea battle. In the water ball, Alusha, who was wearing the flying armor, raised the Sea Emperor's sword high in the air, causing the entire audience to burst into enthusiastic cheers, welcoming the victory. Compared to the loud cheers from the audience, the contestant area of Saber-Tooth was silent. "Impossible," Sting murmured, as if he had lost his soul. "Miss actually lost." Rog, Lucius, and Audiobook were also silent. It was no wonder that their performance was so unbearable. First of all, they had already determined that Fairy Tale without Noah was no match for Saber-Tooth. Now, after being slapped in the face by Alusha, these people were already dumbfounded. Secondly, Meniba, who could control space magic, was the strongest sorcerer in Saber-Tooth. Even Sting and Rog of the Twin Dragons were no match for her. How could Sting and the others believe their eyes that Meniba was so easily defeated by Fairy Tale? Meniba, who was lying on the ground, looked at the sky in disbelief and murmured, "I lost." These words were buried in the rising and falling cheers of the crowd. And the cheers were simply the biggest mockery for Meniba, who was defeated by Alusha because of her carelessness. At that moment, Meniba raised her head and looked at Alusha, who was holding her weapon high in the water ball and enjoying the cheers of the audience. In her eyes there was unimaginable rage and viciousness. Alusha. Chocolito. Chapter 17:11. Without a doubt, after this round, Alusha was thoroughly hated by Meniba. However, no matter how much Meniba hated Alusha, this twisted and self-belittling girl still couldn't change the fact that she was defeated by Alusha because of her arrogance. Therefore, in this battle, Alusha successfully helped Fairy Tail obtain a valuable 10 points. Although Meniba lost because of her arrogance, she still managed to last past the 5-minute time limit, so Sabretooth didn't fall to the last place and obtained the second place of this battle, obtaining 8 points. Even though he had gotten second place, Sabretooth's self-esteem had once again been torn to shreds. Originally, Sabretooth thought that if Noah wasn't here, no one would be able to threaten their victory. Because of this battle, Sabretooth's spirit was once again severely damaged. Perhaps they really couldn't learn their lesson. Even at this stage, Meniba and her party still didn't think that a single fairy tale could really suppress a Sabretooth. Therefore, they decided to get back at the Sabretooth part of the duel. Unfortunately, in the end, this group of people was once again severely defeated. Due to the combination of Fairy Tail and Raven Tail's absence, the duel section was divided into 3 rounds. Different from the previous 3 days, the 4th day's duel section was a group duel. 2 people from each group would be selected to fight in pairs. After the 3 group duels, the results were as follows. The first duel was between the Blue Pegasus and the Cotter Cerberus. The result was that the Blue Pegasus won and obtained 10 points. The second duel was between Lamia Scale and Mermaid Heel. The result was a tie with both sides winning 5 points. The third duel was a perfect example of what it meant to be enemies on a narrow road. Fairy Tail vs. Sabretooth. Players: Naz Gadgeloo vs. Sting Logue. In other words, it was a duel between 4 Dragon Slayer Archmages. As far as the process was concerned, this duel was quite interesting. Not to mention anything else, Sting and Logue were indeed not weak. 2 of the 5 most powerful magic shooters in the previous Great Demon Combat Arts exhibition matches, Justin and Logue were at least much more powerful than Naz and Gadgeloo during the S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement exam. However, after 3 months of cultivation, Naz and Gadgeloo could really be said to be reborn. Their strength had increased to the point that even their companions in the guild were surprised. Therefore, Naz and Gadgeloo almost completely defeated Sting and Logue. They won the battle without any injuries, and won another 10 points. In the end, the whole day, the rankings almost didn't change, but the gap between the team scores was widened. First place, Fairy Tail 57p. Second place, Sabretooth 42p. Third place, Mermaid Heel 39p. Fourth place, Lamia Scale 36p. Fifth place, Blue Pegasus 29p. Sixth place, Cotter Cerberus 14p. At this point, the 4th day of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition ended. On the other hand, Fairy Tail completely defeated Sabretooth on this day, pulling the gap between them to 15 points. Without the monsters, could the fairy still defeat the tiger? There was no need to answer Meniba's question. Thus, on this day, the pride of the entire Sabretooth magic shooters was torn to shreds, which gave Lucius and Alyaga a new idea. Perhaps, this time, the title of the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom was really not fated with Sabretooth. After all, the great demonic battle show had entered the real late stage. The end of the 4th day meant that the 5th day was coming. At this time tomorrow, the outcome would be revealed. However, facing Fairy Tail, would Sabretooth really be able to win tomorrow? No one knew about this. There was only one thing that could be confirmed. That was, as the great demonic battle show went on, an unknown plan was also going on. Night, who knew how many times it had fallen? In the palace in Emerald's room, the princess of the Fiori Kingdom was standing by the window like before, looking at the night sky outside, her delicate face full of worry. At this time the door was pushed open, and Alcardios walked into the room. Looking at Emerald, who was standing by the window, he was silent for a while, then suddenly opened his mouth. The 4th day of the Great Demonic Battle Show has ended. After tomorrow the results will be out. Yes. Emerald's small hand slowly clenched as she whispered. At that time, whether or not the solar eclipse plan will be carried out will depend on the results of the Great Demonic Battle Show. Whether or not it is carried out, we must be prepared. Alcardios said. The magic collection is basically complete. Now we only need the power of the Star Elf Archmages. To be more precise, it should be the power of the keys of the 12 zodiac gates. Emerald turned around and looked at Alcardios. Sir Alcardios, how are the 2 Star Elf Archmages in the guild now? Hearing this, Arcadios' expression turned solemn and serious. I was just about to report this matter to the princess. What? Emerald suddenly became nervous. Could it be that there is a problem? Yes, Alcardios said with a serious expression. Of the 2 Star Elf Archmages in the guild, one of them suddenly disappeared, and even the one who is beyond the human range also disappeared. What? Emerald was slightly surprised and quickly asked. Why is it like this? The reason is still under investigation. Alcardios hesitated for a moment and then said. However, I found that the lock on the Eclipse Gate seems to have been unlocked a little. The lock on the Eclipse Gate was unlocked. Emerald was more and more surprised. But to unlock the Eclipse Gate, one must use the keys of the 12 zodiac gates. Yes. Alcardios looked at Emerald and said. So someone must have used part of the keys of the 12 zodiac gates to unlock the Eclipse Gate. Feitsue's complexion suddenly became somewhat uncertain. After a while, Emerald raised her head and looked at Alcardios. Let's go. Let's go to the Eclipse Gate. At the same time in the Dragon Graveyard, Noah and Xuanai were still hugging each other with their eyes closed as if they were resting. At a certain moment, Noah's ears moved slightly. He opened his eyes and looked forward. There, a person in a black robe slowly walked over and stopped in front of Noah. Xuanai seemed to have noticed the footsteps and quickly opened her eyes. Under the gaze of Noah and Xuanai, the black-robed person reached out and lifted the hood of the cloak. Looking at the appearance that appeared under the hood, Noah and Xuanai were shocked almost at the same time. Lucy. It was Lucy. However, the other party lowered her head and spoke with a trace of vicissitudes of life on her face. I am not the Lucy of this era. Not the Lucy of this era? Noah and Xuanai were both startled. Under such circumstances, the other party looked straight at Noah and said this. I am from the future. Chapter 17:12. This was a very vast space. Moreover, it was located in the Palace of Coloches. At first glance, this vast space looked like a hall. However, the size of this hall was not only comparable to an ordinary palace, but it also had an indescribable sense of solemnity. Even if it was said to be the palace of the king, there would definitely be people who would believe it. Unfortunately, this vast and solemn hall was completely empty. There was nothing in it at all. No, it should be said that apart from one thing, there was nothing else in this vast hall. That thing was a door. A very grand and tall door. Its height alone reached more than 10 meters. It was engraved with the sun, moon, and stars, as if it was written with the truth of heaven and earth. Located in this hall, under the contrast of this very mysterious door, the solemn atmosphere in the air was particularly strong. Obviously, this was a place that not just anyone could enter. It was filled with an incredible sense of silence. At a certain moment, a series of footsteps began to sound. Emerald and Alcardios entered this vast hall together, came to the front of the magnificent door, and went straight to a device next to the door, then stopped in front of the device. Emerald looked at the device with a very serious gaze. The more she looked, the more serious Emerald's expression became. In the end, Emerald came to a conclusion. Yes, the lock was indeed opened a little. Without a doubt, someone must have used the key of the 12 zodiac gates to do this. And the person who can do this besides me and the princess is probably only that person. Alcardios continued Emerald's words. The person who suggested to the princess to use the solar eclipse plan to save the future. The person from the future. This was not a joke, nor was it an exaggeration. At least, Emerald and Alcardios knew that the so-called person from the future was completely valid. As long as he borrowed the power of the door in front of him, he could do this. Once opened, he can enter the torrent of time and freely travel back to the past the solar eclipse. Alcardios looked at the magnificent door in front of him and said as if talking to himself. Through this door from the future to this era, no one knows better than him how to open the lock of the door. Feitsue heavily nodded her head and fell into her own memories. When did that person from the future come to this era? As for the specific time, Fatesue also didn't know. Fatesue only knew that the person from the future suddenly appeared in front of her one day and brought her a shocking news. July 7th, X791. During this period of time, there will be 10,000 dragons attacking this country. This country and this era will be destroyed. Emerald whispered. The only way to avoid this is to gather mana and open the eclipse gate. Then we can turn the massive mana into a huge cannon that can destroy 10,000 dragons. We can use this to destroy the huge dragon horde and save this country and the world. This was the reason why Emerald and Alcardios used the Great Magic Battle Show as a bait to hold an annual ceremony that would determine the ranking of the major guilds in the kingdom. They were secretly collecting the magic power of magic shooters from all over the kingdom. The eclipse gate that could allow people to freely travel back to the past. Through this gate, that person from the future came to this era and brought the news of 10,000 dragons attacking the kingdom and the world to Fatesue. For this reason, Fatesue and Alcardios spent 7 years to collect the mana needed to open the eclipse gate. This was because the people from the future had told Emerald that other than traveling to the past, the solar eclipse could also use the gathered magic power to launch a cannon. The power of the cannon was enough to destroy 10,000 giant dragons and save the country and the world. In addition to the huge amount of mana needed to open the eclipse gate, there was another condition to open it. That was to gather all the keys of the 12 zodiac gates and open the eclipse gate. This was the reason why there was a legend that once the 12 zodiac gates keys were gathered, the power was enough to change fate. As long as the 12 golden keys were gathered and the eclipse gate was opened, one could freely travel back to the past and change history and fate. That person from the future told Fatesue that in order to change the fate of the world being destroyed by 10,000 dragons, he came from the future. Using the mana he collected for 7 years to launch the eclipse cannon and destroy 10,000 dragons. This was the eclipse gate's plan. However, Fatesue had not decided whether to carry out this plan or not. The reason was simple, because Fatesue did not fully believe the words of that person from the future. Logically speaking, the dragons should have perished 400 years ago. Even if there were survivors, there should not be as many as 10,000 dragons. Fatesue looked at the tall gate. If that is the case, how could there be 10,000 dragons attacking the kingdom and the world being destroyed? Because of this, the princess has been hesitating whether to carry out the eclipse gate's plan or not, right? Alcardios understood Fatesue's thoughts. However, the person from the future who spoke to the princess left us a prophecy. That's right. Fatesue's eyes flashed. That person from the future said that the Great Demonic Martial Arts Exhibition will use a very special method to obtain the result. Based on that result, under normal circumstances it should be impossible to happen. And if such a special result happens, then it can only prove that the words of that person from the future are true. Alcardios said the plan in Fatesue's heart. When that time comes, the princess will carry out the solar eclipse plan, open the solar eclipse gate, and be ready to fire the solar eclipse cannons to destroy the 10,000 dragons. For this reason, we must first prepare to open the eclipse gate. The mana has been collected, and the only thing left is the key to the 12 zodiac gates. Fatesue reached out and touched the device in front of her. Now the lock of the eclipse gate has been partially unlocked. Obviously, that person from the future used part of the key. This speculation was basically correct. After capturing Sueno, Law brought the Aries, Gemini, Scorpio, Libra, and Pisces star spirit keys here and opened part of the lock of the eclipse gate. Then, Law brought the key back to the dragon graveyard and threw it next to the unconscious Sueno. Noah picked it up and returned it to Sueno. What's going on? Alcardios frowned. Why is the key to Sueno Agulia in the hands of that person from the future? It seems that while we are preparing, that person from the future is also secretly preparing. Fatesue whispered. Now we only need Lucy Heartfilia's key to open this lock completely, and we can open the eclipse gate at any time. So princess, what should we do now? Alcardios asked. Previously the princess seemed to have her own ideas, right? Now we must borrow the power of Lucy Heartfilia. Fatesue turned her head and looked at Alcardios. Master Alcardios, can you bring Lucy Heartfilia here and ask her to assist us? I understand. Alcardios nodded. I will personally ask Lucy Hartfilia to assist us. Only then did Fatsue's complexion slightly relax. However, whether it was Fatsue, Alcardios or Law, none of them expected this. Law was not the only one who came back from the future. There was another person from the future who came to this era. In the dragon graveyard, Noah and Sueno fell into silence after listening to the news brought by Lucy, who claimed to have never been here. 10,000 dragons. Sueno's voice became a little hoarse. Is that really possible? I know this matter will not be easily believed, the future Lucy said bitterly. But please believe me, what I said is true. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy. Chapter 17:13. Noah had 100 ways to deny the news brought by the future Lucy. Just like what Emerald said 400 years ago, the dragon race had already been wiped out by Aeconarolia. Even if some survived, there shouldn't be as many as 10,000 dragons that survived. So, this matter was outrageous no matter how he thought about it. In addition, if there really were 10,000 dragons in this world, then humans would have been slaughtered by the dragons long ago. Why did they wait until now to welcome the dragon's attack? Where did the 10,000 dragons live before this? One question after another gave Noah ample reason to doubt Lucy. However, from Lucy's bitter face and painful voice, Noah couldn't arouse the slightest doubt. Therefore, Noah believed her. If you are really Lucy, then we have no reason to doubt your words. Noah looked straight at the future Lucy and said, "But if you came back to this era from the future, then I want to ask, in the future world under the attack of 10,000 dragons, did we not resist at all?" Resist? The future Lucy's tone became even more bitter. That was 10,000 dragons, how could we resist? Even if there were 10,000 dragons, couldn't we resist? Noah frowned. Did the future me not do anything? Although he didn't know the specific strength of the 10,000 attacking dragons, but 400 years ago, Aeconarolia alone was able to slaughter the entire dragon race. Even if the strength of those dragons far exceeded that of humans, it shouldn't reach the 4-digit level. Even if there were 10,000 dragons that didn't reach the 4-digit level, with Noah's strength, it shouldn't be impossible to resist, right? After all, 7 years ago in this world, Noah was already comparable to Aeconarolia. So, if even Aeconarolia could single-handedly slaughter an entire dragon race, then there was no reason why Noah couldn't do it. According to this, with Noah here, even if 10,000 dragons appeared, they shouldn't be unable to resist. Listening to Lucy's words, the future seemed to only be filled with despair and fear. However, something that Noah didn't expect happened. The future you? Lucy looked at Noah with an extremely hesitant gaze. After a while, she mustered up her courage and said such a sentence. Although I don't know what the future you did, in the future I know you didn't appear at all. You didn't even exist in fairy tale. You? What did you say? Noah was really surprised. The future me isn't in fairy tale? Not to mention not being there, I haven't even heard of your existence. The future Lucy said with great doubt. Logically speaking, with how powerful you are, I should have at least heard of you. However, as far as I can remember, the president has never adopted a child, much less a grandson by the name of Noah Dole. Thus, when I returned to this era and saw you, I was also very surprised. The doubt and surprise in the future Lucy's tone was indeed very strong. Moreover, the way the future Lucy looked at Noah was completely like looking at a stranger. She didn't have the kind of intimacy and familiarity that the Lucy in fairy tale looked at Noah. These phenomena all proved a problem. That is, in the era of the future Lucy, there was indeed no such person as Noah in fairy tale. What's more, in that era, whether or not Noah existed was a problem. Regarding this fact, Noah was silent. Although there were more or less complicated feelings in his heart, Noah still understood what was going on. Originally, Noah was not a person of this world, but a transcendent existence born from the fragments of the starting worlds of thousands of worlds in between worlds. The reason why he came to this world was that the worlds that birthed Noah wanted to give Noah a good environment to grow up in, so they sent Noah here. In other words, for this world, Noah shouldn't exist. As a result, because of the world's blessing, Noah came to this world and quietly made some changes in this world. There was no such thing as Noah in the future Lucy's era, probably because the development of that era was the original trajectory of this world. And the era where Noah is now, because of the existence of Noah, has undergone some changes and became independent from the original trajectory of the era. Future Lucy tried to go back to the past through the spacetime door called solar eclipse to change her fate, and she happened to come to the era where Noah existed. In other words, the era of Noah and the future Lucy were two different developments in the same world, which was similar to the theory of parallel worlds. It had to be said that this was a very regrettable matter. If Noah existed in the era of the future Lucy, then with Noah's ability, which was too high for this world, he might be able to save everyone and not let the future Lucy's era go to destruction. Looking at the pain and sadness of the future Lucy when she mentioned the future, Noah had enough reason to believe. In the future Lucy's era, everyone in Fairy Tale died. I have a question. Noah looked at the future Lucy and said, "Do you know what Project Solar Eclipse is?" Project Solar Eclipse? The future Lucy was slightly startled and immediately shook her head. "Sorry, I haven't heard of it." Then the second question. Noah's eyes slowly condensed. "Besides you, is there a second person who came back to this era from the future?" "A second person from the future?" The future Lucy froze and answered almost reflexively. "I don't know, but in my era I was the only one who came to this era through the solar eclipse." Hearing the future Lucy's words, some of the doubts in Noah's heart gradually solved. There is no doubt that this Lucy came back from the future with only one purpose. That is to tell the future of this country and even the world to the people of this era and to save the tragedy of this era. However, Lucy was not the only one who came from the future to this era. The guy who called himself Law once said that if there was no Noah in this year's Great Demonic Combat Arts competition, then the result would be doomed. In other words, Law knew very well what the future of this era would be without the existence of Noah. In this way, there was only one thing that could be proven. Law was also a person from the future. Moreover, Law also arranged a plan with the solar eclipse as the center in an attempt to do something. Was it because Law clearly knew that 10,000 dragons were about to attack this world, and this world was heading toward destruction, so he wanted to change that fate? Or did he have other plans? Noah felt that he was getting closer to the truth. At this moment, Xuanai suddenly hesitated and said so. "Sir Noah, I think from the future, there is more than one person who came to this era." The future Lucy was startled. Noah was also slightly startled and looked at Xuanai. Under Noah's gaze, Xuanai pursed her lips and said in a low voice, "I know the true identity of the person who called himself Law." With that said, Xuanai told Noah a name. Hearing that name, Noah's eyes flashed and fell into silence again. "I'm sorry, although I came to this era from the future, I didn't bring any plan to save this era." The future Lucy suppressed the emotions in her heart and said to Noah emotionally, "But you are so powerful, you must have a way to save this era. I beg you, save this era, save my companions, save our future." Hearing this, Noah smiled. "You don't need to say that, I will do that." Chapter 17:14. In the future, when Lucy found Noah and told him what would happen in the future, Noah gradually began to realize the hidden undercurrents of this year's Great Demonic Combat Arts exhibition game. Many things were happening outside. First, in order to prepare to open the Eclipse Gate at any time, Alcardios went to the Inn of Fairy Tale, hoping to talk to Lucy. Of course, in the inn, Alicia, Wendy, Naz, and Gray, who were originally in the same group as Lucy, were also present. After some negotiations, the group agreed to discuss with Alcardios, and under Alcardios' lead, they arrived at the location of the Eclipse Gate. There, Alcardios told Alicia and the others a part of the Eclipse plan, and hoped to get Lucy's help. However, before Lucy could reply, someone barged in and directly arrested Alcardios, Alicia, and the others. It was the Minister of National Defense of the Fiori Kingdom, Dardan. This Minister of National Defense did not know the true content of the Eclipse plan, but he knew that Alcardios was preparing to open the Eclipse Gate that could travel through time and space. Under such circumstances, Dardan thought that Alcardios was preparing to use the Eclipse Gate to return to the past, and then do something to change history, and expressed extremely strong opposition to this. Thus, without knowing the true contents of the solar eclipse plan, the Minister of Defense barged in with his soldiers in order to protect the current history. He directly captured Alcardios and imprisoned the Star Elven Archmage who could open the solar eclipse gate, which was Lucy, as an accomplice. As for Alicia, Wendy, Naz, Gray, and the others, they were all chased out of the palace and sent back to the inn. When the high mages of Fairy Tale found out about this matter, they were all furious. If it was just to arrest Alcardios, it would have been fine. However, in order to prevent the solar eclipse from taking place, Dutton treated Lucy as an accomplice and imprisoned her. This undoubtedly violated the fairy tale's taboo. Therefore, before dawn, Makarov made arrangements for Naz, Windy, Mira, Hubby, Xiaolulu, and Lili to form a team. When the finals of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition began tomorrow, they would sneak into the palace and rescue Lucy. In addition, Alusha, Gray, Gadjaloo, Julian, and Laxus were in charge of attending tomorrow's finals, attracting the kingdom's attention to the Great Demon Combat Arts competition, so that Naz and the others could take advantage of the situation and rescue Lucy. As for the others, they continued to search for Noah and Xuanai. Fairy Tale, who had prepared everything properly, did not notice anything. On the top of a building opposite the Fairy Tale Hotel, Law quietly watched the development of all this, and an evil smile gradually appeared on his face. Although a lot of accidents have happened now, history has begun to go on the right track. If it continues to develop like this, the result of tomorrow's Great Demon Combat Arts competition will definitely be the same as the history I know. As a person from the future, Law clearly knows what the result of tomorrow's Great Demon Combat Arts competition will be. In order to let Emerald trust him and open the Gate of Eclipse, Law told Emerald the result. If that result appears, it can prove that the future Law said is true, and Emerald will open the Gate of Eclipse. However, Law did not expect that in this era, there would be a person who has no intersection with the history he knows. Noah Dole. Law's expression became uncertain. That guy, who the hell is he? Not only does he not exist in the history that Law is familiar with, but he also has that kind of power beyond the scope of human beings, so Law really has a deep fear of Noah. If this variable that does not exist in history is allowed to continue to be active in the Great Demon Combat Arts competition, then in the end the prophecy that Law told Emerald will definitely collapse because of the intervention of Noah, a person who does not exist. At that time, Emerald will no longer help Law open the Gate of Eclipse. If the Gate of Eclipse cannot be opened, then Law's coming to this era will become meaningless. Therefore, Law did not hesitate to take away Xuanai at the risk of angering Noah at any time to restrict Noah and guide history back to the track he is familiar with. And Law's efforts were not in vain after all. Although a lot of things have happened that deviated from the history I know now, history is finally back on the right track, and my prophecy will definitely be fulfilled. Let Emerald believe my words and open the Gate of Eclipse. Law raised the corner of his mouth. At that time, even if you know Adol are beyond common sense and stronger than all humans, it will be useless. After leaving this sentence, Law directly turned into a black shadow and disappeared quietly as if blending into the moonlit night. On the other side in the palace, Emerald, who learned that Alcardios was taken down, hurriedly went to Dutton and told him the real content of the Eclipse plan. What? In Emerald's room, a short old man was shocked. 10,000 dragon generals are attacking the kingdom? How can that kind of thing happen? I know you won't believe it. In fact, I don't believe it either. Emerald closed her eyes. That's why I decided to only prepare to open the Gate of Eclipse until the end of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition. Whether to carry out the Eclipse plan and open the Gate of Eclipse will have to wait for the results of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition. You intend to entrust the future of the kingdom to the results of a festival? Dutton said with a somewhat ugly expression. Princess, isn't that a bit inappropriate? Apart from this, is there anything else we can do? Emerald smiled helplessly. As long as there is a 1 in 10,000 chance that this kingdom will be in danger, we must prepare for the future of this kingdom. Dutton opened his mouth, but no words came out. Whether to carry out the Eclipse plan or not, let's wait for the results of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition to tell me. The helpless smile on Emerald's face turned into an expression full of determination. She stared at the gradually brightening sky outside and said, "Before the results come out, I won't believe any of this." But, is the result possible? Dutton hesitated and said, based on the current situation without Noah Dole's participation, the result that the person from the future mentioned should be very difficult to appear, right? Because it's difficult to appear. Once it appears, it can prove that what the person from the future said is true. Emerald looked at Dutton and said very seriously, "So all we can do is wait for the results to appear." I understand, Dutton said in a deep voice. If it's for the future of this kingdom, I will support Her Royal Highness. Thank you very much for your understanding, Minister. Emerald nodded and immediately, once again, looked at the gradually brightening sky outside. At this time, Emerald's mind was only thinking about the prophecy that Law told her. The sorcerers of the Guild fairy tale will defeat their opponents one by one. In the end, they will face Sting of the Saber-Tooth, with wounds all over their bodies. All of them will be unharmed, and Sting will kneel down and surrender. This result no one could have predicted. Because of this, Law's prophecy seemed to be very convincing when it came true. Everything depends on the results of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition. Emerald, who had made up her mind, didn't notice it. In the night sky outside, a figure that looked like a fairy was floating there like a ghost. Looking down, a thoughtful light flashed in her emerald gem-like eyes. It seems that something incredible has really happened. Mavis looked in the direction of the hotel where Fairy Tale was located. After a while she smiled sweetly. There's no other way, let's go help those children. Chapter 17:15. The next day, as soon as the sun rose, the citizens of Coloccas were in high spirits, because today was the finals of the Great Demonic Arts Tournament. After today's tournament in the following year, the rankings of the various guilds from all over the Fiori Kingdom would be revealed. The citizens of Coloccas were very much looking forward to this. Without a doubt, this year's Great Demonic Arts Tournament was much more exciting than the previous ones. In the previous Great Demonic Arts exhibition matches, it was basically Sabertooth who was unparalleled. Kara and Leo, who belonged to the Lamia scale, didn't participate in the previous Great Demon Combat Arts exhibition at all. Kagura, who was a member of the Mermaid Heel, had never appeared in the Great Demon Combat Arts Tournament in the past. This way Sabertooth naturally didn't have any strong opponents, and was almost always successful, easily winning the championship every time. Although this made Sabertooth's popularity quite high, in terms of the level of excitement of the tournament, it definitely couldn't compare to this year's Great Demonic Arts Tournament. Not to mention, in this year's Great Demonic Combat Arts exhibition, a fairy tale had appeared out of nowhere. So this year's Great Demonic Arts Tournament was very exciting, and many people were looking forward to it. And the last day of the Great Demonic Arts Tournament was quickly approaching. Today, the cheers of the audience were much louder than the previous days, and people's spirits began to soar. Under such circumstances, the finals of the Great Demonic Arts Tournament began. Unlike the previous days, on the last day of the Great Demonic Arts Tournament, there was no part of the tournament, nor was there a part of the duel, only a competition. Survival battle. The venue of the tournament was the entire Coloccas. The teams of the major guilds would be scattered to different corners of Coloccas, and would be free to move as soon as the tournament began. During the period of movement there were no restrictions on methods, no restrictions on magic, and when they met they could either fight or escape. No matter what, in the end, as long as an opponent couldn't continue to fight, they would get 1 point. This point would be added to the total score of each team. In addition, each team would have a captain. The captain's name list was not public. However, when the team leader was defeated, the team that defeated the team leader would receive 5 points, which would also be added to the total score. According to this calculation, when all the contestants in a team were defeated, they would be able to provide a high score of 9 points. Defeating all the contestants from other teams, the highest score would be 45 points. Therefore, even if it was Cotter Cerberus, who was currently in last place with only 12 points, they still had a chance to turn the tables and win the game. It was under such rules that the battle for survival unfolded. Unfortunately, not long after the start of the competition, the Blue Pegasus, whose individual strength was not very high, were all eliminated. Not long after, all of the members of the Cotter Cerberus were also eliminated and left the stage. As the tournament progressed, all but one member of the Mermaid Heel was eliminated, with the exception of Kagura, leaving behind only one person. Immediately after, in the Lamia scale, other than Kara, Leo and Shirley's group, all the other members also left the stage. Next, under the cheers of the audience, the Fairy Tale and the Saber-Tooth were in an all-out battle. First it was Grey versus Lucifer. The battle between the two magic users was one-sided at first, and Grey was suppressed by Lucifer. In the end it was Grey who turned the tables and overturned Lucifer, obtaining victory. Next it was Gajalu versus Log. The duel between the two Dragon Slayer magic users was just like yesterday's duel. Gajalu completely crushed Rog and in the end he defeated Rog and won. Then Laxus also encountered Alyuga. However, just as the duel between the two lightning-attributed mages was about to begin, Kara suddenly appeared and dealt with Alyuga with a single blow. Without Noah's participation, the strongest sorcerer in this year's Great Demon Combat Arts drill was extremely powerful. Facing Kara, who was ranked 5th among the top 10 Saint Archmages, Laxus chose to fight. After a hard battle, with his whole body covered with wounds, Laxus defeated Kara with a single blow of the Dragon Slayer mystery, causing the audience to cheer. Then Gray met up with Julian and encountered Leo and Shiria, who were also in the same team. After a hard battle, he defeated the two. However, what happened next was completely unexpected. Elisha encountered Kagura halfway, and after a wonderful hand-to-hand battle, she was interrupted by Maniba. Because of yesterday's tragedy, Maniba thoroughly hated Elisha. Therefore, during the duel between Elisha and Kagura, Maniba used her space magic to suddenly move behind Elisha and launch a sneak attack. At that time, Elisha didn't notice at all. However, Kagura, who was confronting Elisha, clearly saw Maniba appearing behind Elisha. So Kagura directly took action and saved Elisha in Maniba's shock. Originally, Kagura was indebted to Noah, and Elisha was Simon's childhood friend who shared weal and woe with him. How could Kagura watch Elisha be attacked? Maniba, who didn't know this, was blinded by hatred. She ignored Kagura's existence and launched a sneak attack on Elisha, but her plan was ruined by Kagura, who disdained such an action. In the end, the furious Elisha and Kagura joined hands and cut down Maniba, defeating this despicable sneak attacker. After that, Elisha and Kagura once again had a fair duel. In the end, Elisha narrowly won and defeated Kagura, winning the duel. At this point, other than Fairy Tail and Sabertooth, the rest of the guilds had all left the stage. However, Elisha, Gray, Julian, Gajalu, and Laxus were all heavily injured and couldn't even stand properly. Sabertooth, on the other hand, only had one person left. That person was Justin. From beginning to end, Justin hadn't engaged in a large-scale battle. Whether it was his stamina or magic power, he was at his peak. Facing a group of opponents who couldn't even stand properly, Justin, who was at his peak, had no reason to lose. However, what happened next made everyone's jaws drop. Facing Elisha's team, Justin had a feeling that he couldn't win no matter what. Under the pressure of that feeling, Justin couldn't help but kneel in front of Elisha's team and choose to surrender. No one could have predicted this result. However, the victory of Fairy Tail still made the entire audience cheer, bringing the curtains to the Great Demon Battle Arts exhibition to an end. In the midst of the cheers that soared into the sky, no one would have thought of that at this moment. It was this shocking result that led to the beginning of the disaster that followed. In the hallway of the palace, Emerald, who was dressed as a Valkyrie, led a large group of people and walked towards the solar eclipse with a serious expression. Next to her, Dayton also had a serious expression and spoke in a deep voice. I didn't expect it to be this result. This can only prove that what the future person said is true. Emerald's eyes flashed with determination. In order to save this country, save this world, I will start the solar eclipse. At the same time, in the dragon graveyard, Noah was looking at a dragon skeleton, thinking about something. At a certain moment, a black shadow flashed behind Noah. Law raised his eyes and looked at Noah, who was looking at the dragon skeleton with his back to him, and said with surprise, "Since you really stayed until now, I thought you would leave. I also thought you wouldn't come, but didn't you come?" Noah turned and looked at Law. "Should I continue to call you Law? Or should I call you Roger?" Chapter 17:16. Rog, one of the 5 powerful archmages who belonged to Sabertooth, and changed the name of Sabertooth. Not only did he have the magic crystal of Dragon Slayer magic in his body, but he had also been personally taught Dragon Slayer magic by Dragon. He was different from the first generation Naz, Gajalu, and Wendy, and also different from the second generation Laxus. He was known as the 3rd generation Dragon Slayer Archmage. He really began to take Rog seriously when he found out that he was a Dragon Slayer Archmage like Sting. At that time, Noah only had one impression of Rog: cold. This Dragon Slayer Archmage had a very cold personality. He was usually quite taciturn and only silently regarded defeating Gajalu as his goal. Moreover, he had not made a move in the Great Demonic Combat Arts exhibition, but his specific strength was much stronger than Naz, Gray, and Gajalu during the S-rank Archmage promotion exam 7 years ago. This was the information Noah knew about Rog. So, I completely did not expect that you were Rog from the future. Noah looked at the evil man who called himself Rog in front of him, but whose real name was Rog, and narrowed his eyes slightly. However, this can explain why the magic aura I feel from your body is so special. When Noah saw the future Rog for the first time, he inexplicably felt that there was something strange about him, which gave him a strange feeling that he was both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. Now that he thought about it, there was no doubt that the feeling at that time was because this guy was Rog from the future. Therefore, Noah felt that the future Rog was both familiar and strange. As for that strange feeling, it was probably the Dragon Slayer magic on the future Rog. The magic used by this Dragon Slayer Archmage was the Shadow Dragon Slayer magic. In other words, Rog and the future Rog were both Dragon Slayer Archmages raised by Shadow Dragons. It's just that you've changed a lot. Noah slightly sized up the future Rog. If the feeling you give me in this era is cold, then the feeling you give me now is quite evil. To be more precise, it was rather evil. Noah had always sensed an evil aura from the future Rogue's body. That was not the temperament that a kind man or woman should have. In response, future Rogue only twitched his mouth and said in a non-committal manner, "Time will change a person. I'm no longer the idiot from 7 years ago who only knew how to talk about Gajalu and think about how to defeat him." 7 years ago? Noah looked straight at future Rogue. In other words, you came from 7 years in the future? That's right. Future Rogue opened his arms and admitted, "I transmigrated from the era 7 years later through the Eclipse Gate." Noah did not seem too surprised when he heard that. Instead, it was the future Rog who was surprised. "You don't seem too surprised." The smile on future Rogue's face slowly disappeared. "What? Haven't you always wanted to know about the Solar Eclipse Project?" "You said it yourself. I want to know about the Solar Eclipse Project." Noah glanced at future Rogue. "I already know about the solar eclipse. Otherwise, I wouldn't know that you're the future Rogue. So I'll skip this part. You just have to tell me what the Solar Eclipse Project is, and that's all." Hearing this, future Rogue frowned slightly. He couldn't help but have some doubts in his heart. Undoubtedly, Noah didn't have any special reaction to the term solar eclipse before, so he shouldn't know about the existence and power of the solar eclipse. How did he suddenly know about the solar eclipse? This question only flashed through future Rogue's mind for a moment. Soon after, the future Rogue tossed the matter aside and stared at Noah. The so-called solar eclipse plan is to use the mana collected during the 7 years of solar eclipse as a cannon and fire it. After opening the solar eclipse gate, we'll fire the solar eclipse cannons and destroy 10,000 attacking dragons. Destroy 10,000 attacking dragons? Noah was stunned. Solar eclipse has such power? But that's not right. If the solar eclipse really had such power, why didn't the solar eclipse cannons appear in Lucy's future era and destroy 10,000 dragons? Future Rogue didn't know that Noah had such doubts in his mind. He thought that Noah was shocked by the 10,000 attacking dragons. "Maybe you won't believe me, but I have to tell you that after today, there will be 10,000 attacking dragons attacking this country," Future Rogue said in a deep voice. "That's the real hell. A hell that no one can imagine. In my era, which is 7 years later, the world has been dominated by dragons. Less than 10% of humans survived." Future Rogue closed his eyes. "That's why I came to this era from the future, and asked Princess Emerald of this country to hold the Great Demon Battle exhibition to collect the mana needed to activate the solar eclipse. When the dragons attack, the eclipse gate will be opened and the eclipse cannon will be launched to destroy 10,000 attacking dragons and save the future of this era. That's the plan for the solar eclipse." Future Rogue sighed. "However, Princess Emerald didn't believe me. In order to make Princess Emerald trust me, I told her about a future I was familiar with. Only when the future I spoke of became true would Princess Emerald believe me. Then, she would open the solar eclipse and carry out the solar eclipse plan to save the future of this world." Hearing this, Noah's heart skipped a beat. "The future you're talking about, don't tell me you're referring to the result of the Great Demon Battle exhibition?" That's right. Future Rogue nodded heavily. In the history I know, the Great Demon Battle Exhibition ended in a very special way. Fairy Tale's members were all unharmed, and the other guilds were all defeated. In the end, Sting was at his peak, but he felt that he couldn't defeat your guild, so he knelt down and surrendered. Once this happens, Princess Emerald will believe me and carry out the solar eclipse plan. At this point, the way the Future Rogue looked at Noah suddenly changed. However, I didn't expect you to appear at this time. Noah immediately understood what Future Rogue wanted to say. Since Noah didn't exist in Future Lucy's era, then Noah shouldn't exist in Future Rogue's era either. Under such circumstances, if a person who didn't exist in the history that the Future Rogue was familiar with suddenly appeared and joined the fairy tale, that played a very important role in the future and displayed astonishing power, the Future Rogue would definitely panic. After all, with Noah's power, if he continued to be active in the Great Demon Battle Exhibition, the special result of Sting kneeling down and surrendering would most likely not appear. This way, Future Rogue's prophecy about Emerald would collapse on its own, and Emerald wouldn't execute the solar eclipse plan. At that time, Future Rogue's plan would be completely ruined. Why have I never heard of your existence in my era? I don't really understand. Maybe it's because I've transmigrated to this era and caused some changes in it? Future Rogue said. However, although you're very strong, no matter how strong you are, what can you do against 10,000 dragons? How many dragons can you defeat? 10? 100? Future Rogue shook his head. Unfortunately, your opponent is 10,000 dragons. With your power alone, you can't change the future. Therefore, the solar eclipse plan must be executed, Rogue said resolutely. Because of this, I have to think of a way to make you leave the Great Demon Battle Exhibition and let the outcome of the Great Demon Battle Exhibition develop towards the future I know. All of this is to save this world and save the future. This is what you want to know. I've already told you everything, Future Rogue said sincerely. You should be able to understand my words, right? Noah fell silent. However, in the next second, Noah calmly spoke. Unfortunately, you're lying. Chapter 17:17. At that moment, the expression on Future Rogue's face froze. The atmosphere in the space suddenly became heavy, and the temperature around Noah and Rogue seemed to have dropped a little, giving off a feeling that they were ready to draw their swords at any moment. After a while, Future Rogue spoke with an unpleasant expression. What makes you say that? Don't you realize that your words contradict each other? Noah smirked. You just said that the solar eclipse can gather mana and fire it like a cannon, and that its power is enough to destroy 10,000 dragons, right? That's right. Future Rogue nodded. Are you suspecting that the solar eclipse doesn't have such an effect? Or are you suspecting that the solar eclipse doesn't have such power? Basically, I'm suspecting both of these, Noah said as if he didn't notice Future Rogue's unpleasant expression. If the solar eclipse really has the power to destroy 10,000 dragons, then in your era you could have used this power to destroy the dragons, right? In my era, less than 10% of the human race was left. Even in this era, it would take 7 years to collect all the mana. How could we possibly collect all of it when less than 10% of the human race was left? The Future Rogue asked loudly. That's not a reason for you to suspect me, right? You couldn't gather enough mana to activate the solar eclipse in your era. Noah looked at Future Rogue with a faint smile. If that's the case, how did you come to this era? The Future Rogue suddenly froze. Since you were able to pass through the solar eclipse gate and come to this era, it means that you gathered enough mana to activate the gate in your era. Noah laughed coldly. Can't that mana be used to fire the solar eclipse cannon? In my era, the dragons had already taken over the world and were scattered all over the world, Future Rogue said after a moment of silence. Even if there was enough mana to fire the solar eclipse cannon, it wouldn't be able to destroy the dragons that were scattered all over the world. Are you trying to say that the dragons would only gather at this time and attack the Fiori Kingdom? Noah looked indifferent. Then, even if 10,000 dragons were to gather and attack the Fiori Kingdom, it would be impossible for the solar eclipse cannon to cover the entire country and eliminate 10,000 dragons, right? Even if it couldn't eliminate all of them, it could at least eliminate most of them. Future Rogue's tone became irritated. At this time, we should eliminate as many threats as we can. That way, the danger level would be much lower. I agree with you. Noah looked up and stared at the Future Rogue. as long as your real goal is to eliminate 10,000 dragons. Hearing this, the future rogue's expression darkened and he sneered. In the end, you just don't trust me. Isn't that obvious? Noah smiled sarcastically. A person who can casually use the lives of 5 players from Raventail as bait to test me, and who can also use his emotions to threaten to kill the survivors of that guild and kidnap my companions without batting an eyelid. How can I believe the words of a person who is filled with evil energy? Not to mention, the so-called 10,000 dragons attack that you mentioned doesn't match the history that you told me before at all. Noah looked around him. You said that 400 years ago, the dragons were wiped out by Aconarolia. But now 10,000 dragons suddenly appeared out of nowhere. That's a contradiction. So, I can only imagine that if what you said is true, how did the 10,000 arms come about? Noah suddenly smiled. For example, how did the dragon's corpses come back to life? Noah then turned his gaze to the future Rog as he spoke. Another example is that, like you, they came from different eras through the Eclipse Gate. When these words came out of Noah's mouth, the heavy atmosphere in the air suddenly exploded. Wong! Black mist surged from future Rogue's body and turned into a black wind. It was like a viscous swamp, but also like a rolling black wave. It surged violently towards Noah. However, in the face of the surging pitch-black waves, Noah merely clenched his fist, and magical veins that looked like electric wires appeared on his arm. He then blasted them forward. Dong! The terrifying power turned into a terrifying shock wave, causing Noah's fist wind to be like a cannonball. It violently collided with the huge black wave that was surging over. With a loud muffled sound, the huge black wave exploded, scattering in all directions like sparks. However, the black fog that had spread in all directions did not disappear immediately. Instead, it seemed to have blended into the air and spread out, surrounding Noah. Then, future Rogue's voice sounded from all directions. You are indeed an anomaly. Your existence has disrupted the history of this world, causing the future development and the direction of the era to become unpredictable. So, I think there should be a lot of people thanking me, Noah said as he used his sensing ability to search for future Rogue's whereabouts. If the determined future in history can't be changed, then let me mess it up. One's own fate must be controlled by oneself. Unfortunately, it's too late. Future Rogue's voice was still echoing in all directions. His actual body could not detect it at all. The results of the Great Demonic Martial Arts Competition are out. That princess must have started to believe me, and is preparing to open the Eclipse Gate. It's too late for you to rush over now. Hearing this, Noah laughed in disdain. Should I call you stupid? Or should I call you stupid? Do you think I've been waiting for you here all this time? Future Rogue's breath stopped. Only now did the future Rogue realize that he had overlooked something of utmost importance. Where's Shuanai? Future Rogue asked in shock. Why is Shuanai missing? Isn't that a matter of course? Noah's eyes glowed brightly. Although before this I didn't know what Project Eclipse was, nor did I know what you were planning, but since it's called Project Eclipse, then there's no doubt that the core of this plan is a solar eclipse. Future Rogue was shocked when he heard Noah's words. Looks like you figured it out, Noah said mockingly. That's right. Just in case, I've already sent Shuanai to guard the Eclipse Gate. No matter who tries to get close, Shuanai will stop them with all her might. Damn it. Future Rogue cursed angrily. Then his voice disappeared. However, the surrounding black fog did not disperse and continued to surround Noah. Under Noah's sensing ability, Rogue's aura seemed to cover the entire area of the black fog. However, knowing that Shuanai was guarding the Eclipse Gate and was planning to stop anyone from getting close, Rogue would not stay here. I see. Noah's expression darkened. Only a projection came to see me, but his actual body doesn't dare to come in front of me? That was to be expected. Future Rogue was afraid of Noah to begin with, so why would he personally come in front of Noah and risk his life? It was estimated that the future Rogue was like Jalal in the past, transferring half of his magic power to the body of thoughts in order to deceive Noah's perception. Part of the reason why Noah felt something off about Future Rogue was because of this. In other words, from the very beginning, Future Rogue had never let his actual body appear in front of Noah. The people who came in contact with Noah were only projections that possessed half of Future Rogue's mana. Bang! On the mountain to the east of Coloches, The ground of the giant egg, Flatbird's meeting place suddenly exploded, creating a huge crater in the ground. From within, a ray of light flew out and rushed towards the sky. Then it shot towards the direction of the palace. Chapter 17:18. Just as Noah had said, Emerald and her party were indeed obstructed. "You are." Emerald, who was leading her party, exclaimed in surprise when she saw the girl standing in front of the eclipse gate. "Shuanai Agulia? Are you Princess Emerald of the Fiori Kingdom?" Shuanai's expression was unusually serious as she looked at Emerald and asked, "I'm sorry, I can't let you near the eclipse gate anymore." Shuanai's words made Emerald's expression turn from surprise to seriousness. "Do you know who you're talking to?" Dutton stepped forward and scolded. "The one standing in front of you is the princess of the Fiori Kingdom. How dare you obstruct the princess? Sorcerer, we can punish you any time." "It doesn't matter," Shuanai replied without hesitation. "As long as I can complete Master Noah's orders, even if I have to sacrifice my insignificant life, it doesn't matter." Shuanai's resolute declaration made Dutton's expression stiffen, and he was speechless. Not to mention Dutton, even the soldiers who came with Emerald looked at each other. For a moment they didn't know what to do. Under such circumstances, Emerald remained silent for a while, and then spoke softly. "I can feel that there is not a single bit of falsehood in your words. What an amazing determination. It seems that Lord Noah, who can make you offer up such determination, is not only outstanding in strength, but also in character. But this is not a reason for you to stop us," Emerald said loudly. "Miss Shuanai, please step aside. We have a reason to open the eclipse gate. If you continue to obstruct us, I'll have no choice but to have you taken down. I've said it before, it doesn't matter." Shuanai raised her hand, and in her hand was a dazzling golden key. Her eyes were filled with determination. "But if you don't have the resolve to kill me, then you can't pass me." As she finished speaking, the key in Shuanai's hand emitted a dazzling light. Seeing this scene, the kingdom's soldiers raised the weapons in their hands and pointed them at Yuno. However, Emerald raised her hand and stopped the soldiers from acting rashly. Almost in the next second, a strange phenomenon occurred. The dazzling light emitted from the star elemental key in Shuanai's hand suddenly dimmed. Then Shuanai sensed it. The mana that he had just instilled into the astral key in his hand suddenly went out of control. Together with most of the mana in his body, it was all pulled away by a force. "Well, what?" Shuanai was shocked. Then, because of the loss of a large amount of demonic energy, her body went soft and she knelt on the ground. Seeing that Shuanai was at a loss, Emerald explained, "Since you know this place, you should know that the purpose of our Great Demon Martial Arts exhibition is to gather mana for the solar eclipse. Meanwhile, this is the location of the solar eclipse gate. If you use spells in front of the solar eclipse gate, all of the mana available will be sucked away. You won't be able to fight here." Shuanai's pretty face suddenly changed. "If you can't use magic, no matter how powerful you are as a magic shooter, you're just an ordinary girl." Dutton shook his head. "Unfortunately, you can't stop the princess." Then, Dutton immediately waved his hand. A few soldiers stepped forward and held Shuanai up. Although Shuanai was weak, she still struggled desperately. Unfortunately, just as Dutton said, without mana, Shuanai was just an ordinary girl. There was no way she could fight against a group of men, let alone break free from the restraint of a few soldiers. Under such circumstances, Shuanai could only watch as Emerald and the others walked to the solar eclipse gate, and came to the device next to the solar eclipse gate. That person from the future used Miss Shuanai's key to open a part of the lock. Previously, we also used Lucy Hartfilia's key to open the rest of the lock. Now the solar eclipse gate's lock is completely open. We can open the gate at any time." Emerald stared at the device in front of her. Then she turned her head and looked at Dutton. "How's the preparation going?" "The whole city has entered the highest level of alert. We have also arranged for people to go to the border to monitor. If the dragons appear, we will be able to get the news immediately," Dutton replied. In addition, the soldiers have also begun to evacuate the residents of the city. The magic shooters who came to participate in the Great Demon Battle exhibition are being summoned. They have already gathered in the central square of Coloches. "Very good," Emerald nodded. "After the dragons appear, We will immediately fire the eclipse cannons to destroy the dragons. However, no matter what, there are 10,000 of them. By then, there will definitely be some survivors. We need the power of the magic shooters to fight against the dragons. We must not neglect them. I understand. Dutton pondered for a moment, then glanced at the struggling Xuanai. However, that starling magic shooter seems to have agreed to Noadoria's request to stop us from opening the gate. Should we treat Noadoria and Fairy Tale as enemies? We must not do that. Emerald hurriedly said. Although I don't know what's going on, that Lord's power is much greater than that of an ordinary person. He will be our trump card to destroy the remaining dragons. Moreover, there are many powerful magic shooters in Fairy Tale. We cannot lose this powerful force. However, Noadoria asked Xuanai Agulia to stop the gate from opening. Does this mean that he intends to make an enemy of the kingdom? Dutton frowned. When the time comes, what if he helps the dragons to fight against the kingdom? That lord may not know the true purpose of the Eclipse Project, nor does he know that 10,000 dragons are about to attack. Perhaps like you, he thinks that we intend to use the eclipse to change history. That's why he wants to stop us. Emerald looked at Dutton seriously. Could it be that you, who did the same thing as that lord, also intend to help the dragons to fight against the kingdom? Dutton was speechless. You can't be too presumptuous. Emerald raised her head and looked at the eclipse gate. I don't think that Lord has any ill intentions towards us. Although he is different from us and possesses great power, he is still a human. He wouldn't just watch the dragons destroy our country and destroy this world. Your Highness is right, Dutton said helplessly. Then what should we do now? Hearing this, Feitsue closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened her eyes again, her eyes were full of determination. Emerald then ordered, "Open it." The eclipse gate. Emerald reached out and grabbed the handle of the device in front of her. She twisted it and turned it on. Gotcha! On the magnificent gate called the Eclipse Gate, there was a clear sound, as if some mechanism had been activated. Under the gaze of Emerald and the others, the sun, moon, and stars imprinted on the gate began to move. Then the gate slowly opened. Clang! As the Eclipse Gate slowly opened, a blinding light shone out from the gate. Everyone held their breaths as they looked at the light coming from behind the door. Until the dazzling door was completely open, the entire place fell silent. Rumble. Suddenly, the entire ground began to tremble. What's going on? What's going on? The soldiers of the kingdom's army began to panic. Emerald and Dutton were equally shocked. They tried their best to stabilize themselves as they stood up in panic. Princess, Dutton said in panic. What's going on? Emerald was also at a loss. She looked at the gate. The next moment, Emerald's expression froze. Dong! Following the sound of heavy footsteps, a ferocious dragon claw covered in scales reached out from the Eclipse Gate and landed on the ground. Chapter 17:19. Dong! When the ferocious dragon claw reached out of the huge door called the solar eclipse and slammed into the ground, an astonishing shockwave erupted from the center of the ferocious dragon claw, sending shockwaves in all directions. That impact was simply like a terrifying typhoon above the 12th grade. It was like an explosion, causing the entire ground to be shaken until cracks spread out like a spider web. Ah! The armed soldiers were all blown away by the shockwave amidst a series of cries and cries of agony. They were like pieces of trash as they were blasted away in an extremely clean manner. Xuanai, who was restrained by a group of soldiers, didn't even have time to react before the soldiers who were tightly restraining her were also sent flying. Instead, Xuanai broke free from her restraints and laid on the ground. As if she was in a typhoon, she was blown so hard that she couldn't even open her eyes. Because Jade was lying on the ground, she was able to avoid being blown away. But she could not close her eyes. She stared in the direction of the Eclipse Gate. Her eyes were full of shock. Under such circumstances, the ferocious dragon claw was raised once again, and its owner slowly walked out of the door. Not long after, everyone present, including Emerald, UNI, Dutton, and the soldiers who were blown away by the wind, saw it. A giant dragon walked out of the huge door called Solar Eclipse. In front of the shocked eyes of Feitsue and the others, the giant dragon that came out of the Solar Eclipse Gate opened its pair of scarlet eyes. It raised its huge head and roared towards the sky. Roar, roar, roar. The deafening roar was like the sound of a bell announcing the end of this era. It turned into a sound wave that was loud enough to form a clear echo. It was like a substantial shockwave that erupted once again. At the same time, all the sorcerers and Colokas who were still in the city clearly heard the draconic roar that resounded across the sky. At that moment, the magic shooters from guilds all over the kingdom turned their heads and looked towards the source of the dragon's roar, which was the direction of the palace. Then everyone saw this scene. They saw huge black shadows flapping their wings that seemed to be able to blot out the sun. They rode the wind and flew into the sky one after another. Moreover, as time passed, more and more huge black shadows soared into the sky from the palace. In the end, there were so many of them that they could form a wave. Until a certain moment, the huge black shadows that soared into the sky from the palace finally stopped appearing. However, the huge black shadows were so many that they filled the entire sky. In the next second, the huge black shadows roared towards the sky. Roar, roar, roar. An extremely terrifying roar transformed into a tangible sound wave that poured down from the sky. Like a tidal wave, it surged towards all of Colokas from all directions. At this moment, under the terrifying sound waves, the buildings began to shake and crumble. At this moment, the ground began to tremor under the terrifying sound wave. At this moment, under the terrifying sound